Sir, you're charged with especially aggravated kidnapping. You're also charged with aggravated assault, and you're charged with theft of a firearm worth less than $2,500.
You're talking about stuff that is not relevant.
Hello and welcome to the Court of Public Opinion. I am the Recovery Addict, and boy do I have a case for you today.
Why is the dog chewing on this guy?
I think they have got the wrong guy there.
They got the wrong guy, and the dog was biting him.
He roughing him up quite a bit. There's a lawsuit.
This is the next search on February 28, 2020, 7:44 p.m. How, does the FBI find people? And people is misspelled P-E-O-O-P-L-E.
I object.
Did the defendant find out how the FBI finds people in this case? Oh, she found out.
All right, I cannot tell who was first in chat. I'm not sure who it is. Hello. Welcome back to the Court of Public Opinion. I am the Recovery Addict. Good afternoon. Happy Monday to you. Let's see. Did RA fall asleep again? No, I'm here. No more witnesses. Dr. Bullbutter. See if I can get this to work. There you go. 16-month member, here for longer. Love you, everyone. Dr. Bullbutter, thank you very much. Appreciate your long-term support of the channel. I don't know who is first. Chat not on screen. I didn't on the internet. Oh, Greeners. Greeners won, says Kim. Greeners, and now he's laying low. He's hiding somewhere. I'm trying to see if I can find him. I've got like 20 people saying Greeners won. I was way up. I had scrolled way back looking for it. Could not find it. But Greeners, come out wherever you are. Yeah, you're it. You're it, Greeners. Congratulations. Let's see. Honey's mom. Love this family. Once you come here, you can never leave. Greeners was first in chat. I love how everyone just outs him. Honey's mom, congratulations. 22 months. That is awesome. Also on 22 months, Jennifer Adams. Welcome to the gallery. Thank you, Jennifer. 22 months as well for you. That is just beautiful. Thank you for your support of the channel.
Thank you, sir. You're my new best friend.
Yes, there you go. All right, we're about to go back to court where we have finished getting testimony for the day. But, well, we finished with live witnesses. There might be more testimony. There's going to be some more arguments, and we still have closing statements coming up. So that's going to be really exciting. Hopefully we can get that all in this afternoon. Caitlin Newell says, you got distracted earlier and missed my 18-month shout-out. I cried, I sobbed, I gorged on pickles. Kayla, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I missed your 18-month shout-out. I did get distracted, and I think there were a couple people I missed. My apologies. I never want to do that again. Let's always not miss people. Thank you very much, Kayla. Congratulations on 18 months. Would not be the same without you here. Appreciate it. All right. We are trying to find a place to get my chair where it's comfortable. That works. All right, I can move this out of the way. Don't need that there. Oops. Let's see, Social Force. Did you watch the video during the break? I did. I have to say I wasn't impressed by it. I know that's. I'm not sure. It seemed to be a stretch a little bit. That was the EMT explaining why Todd would be innocent. It seemed like the solution accounted for everything, but it didn't seem like the most logical one. Celestial Force sent a video of an EMT explaining why Todd's not guilty, and it could happen. I don't think anyone's come across the right exactly how it happens situation. I'm not sure if we're going to watch Todd's Cross. Possibly if they end quickly today, we might watch the rest of it. Are they done yet? I missed a few hours today. In this kind of hearing is our closing arguments to the judge. Yes, 15 minutes each plus 5 minutes for rebuttal. So not a lot. but it'll be going here in a bit. Josh, welcome back. Welcome. Good to have you here, my friend. Hope things going well for you. What's the deal with the light cover? Mama KB, here's what they wanted to say. They've been trying to bring that light cover in for the whole trial. Todd's wife had injuries on the back of her hand, like knuckles, and like there are like 2 spots on her hand. I can't remember where, on pretty much on both hands. And they wanted to say, isn't it possible that she was helping cleaning the lights in the hog farm, which is what they were doing? They have record of that, texts of her mentioning that. And if you try to stick your hand inside that light, like to wipe it out with a cloth or something, the lip of that can get your hand. It can scuff it up and scratch it if you're doing it over and over. It's like reaching into a mason jar and squeezing your hand through. And they're saying that's where her hand injuries came from. So they got that in. Eventually, the judge will get to stick her hand in the glass jar and see if she thinks it's a good explanation or not. Let's see. Let's see what else. Could have been a freak accident. I think it could have as well. The cross sealed it for me. Amber Heard 2.0. It's kind of telling me the judge already has their mind made up. If only those cameras had been working. Yeah, that's the if onlys. Call bowl on the jar, says Sherry M. Was there blood on the light cover? I don't know. If there was, she might have wiped it off because she was cleaning it. But there were probably hundreds of those light covers. I've got a sneeze coming on, and it's holding out on me. I'll wait till later. Verdict will be in writing, not today. That's correct. We don't expect to hear anything today as far as the verdict, but I would like to hear the closing arguments. Those will be, I think, quite insightful. Let's see, our train, ghost and train counters up to 68. Why are the pictures in the courtroom covered? I thought they were sound panels to make less echo. I don't think they're pictures. I think they're echo reducing panels. But last time we saw pictures covered in the courtroom, I think was in Murdaugh, where they covered the picture because it was his grandpa whose picture was up on the wall. Grandpa Murdaugh. Not buying that. Doing dishes. Do your knuckles get beat up? They were working on ladders in a hog farm, though. I mean, it's not like in the sink so much as out in the barn. And it's not necessarily a mason jar. A light cover is probably not built to the same specs that a mason jar is. It might have sharper edges and things like that. I always use a corn rake to clean light covers. That was in a different shed. My knuckle is scraped up. I have no clue why, says Northwest. Okay. I've never seen a modern courthouse. I love old courthouses. Some are older than others, but I've never seen a new build courthouse. They all need better technology. Laurie, there are a couple new builds. You'll probably find most of them in big cities, big, large cities that have, 1 or 2 courthouses. If you're dealing with a county courthouse, that's usually one of the oldest buildings in a county is the courthouse. And so unless they built a new one since then, there's a lot of old tech and bad design. Super T saying, yes, they're sound panels, but they need to be painted. Somebody needs to go in there and graffiti those things up. Sarah Boone was a new build courthouse. Yes, so was Maya. Polly, thanks for the kind words. Good to have you here. Thank you. They started filming Hulu's Murdaugh Murders literally right next to the house I'm dog sitting at today in Atlanta. Production trucks are right outside. Megan, you need to stand in the window like all creepy like and try to get in the backdrop. Like try to be one of the unpaid extras. How did they collect the corn rake? I don't see how you would get it in a red Solo cup. Jonathan, they've got big cups. We don't know how she cleaned them. It's all speculation here. Right, but I think Todd probably explained how they're cleaned, how they're wiped out on the inside. So it keeps them bright because it gets dirty in a hog farm. I set off your Amazon.
Please be seated.
Here we go.
Okay, we'll go back on the record. Just before lunch, both parties rested in terms of calling live witnesses. However, I think at least the applicant has additional witnesses to identify by deposition. Is that correct, counsel?
I'm going to mute for just a
yes,
second.
Your Honor, I believe they're on the exhibit list. And
Vice Baby, we're both on for a Lego stream with Valhalla Awaits.
Yes, let's do that, please.
I need tips. I need pro tips. Mine's on Saturday, so let me know.
Exhibit 204, Turbot 2019 deposition.
Okay.
And they believe that both of these have already been submitted.
Book has already been submitted?
We did some of them maybe at the beginning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sounds fair.
There's 258, Hemisath 2019 deposition.
Susan, congratulations on 14 months. Thank you very much.
All right, and I do show both 204 and 258 as having been previously admitted.
Okay. And then, Your Honor, 301 is TRM video deposition from 2019.
I think this angle's tilted just a little bit high.
And that was previously admitted.
Okay. And then 316, 2024 deposition of Peggy Munson.
Was previously admitted.
317, deposition of Jonathan Turbot, 2023.
These are all
317 was previously admitted.
These are all things the judge will have
Your
to
Honor,
read.
is it okay if I just read a few of the next numbers to verify?
Certainly.
318 through 326 should all be depositions taken in 2023 of witnesses. I think the 323 would be one the state would want to talk about.
Yes, I agree with that, Your Honor.
We're going to fight over.
Want to talk about it?
Yeah, that we would want to talk about 323.
Yes. And I do not show 325 as being admitted.
And that would be the additional one that the parties have agreed upon.
All right, thank you.
And then, Your Honor, just to verify, 327 through 337 are also depositions. And I don't believe earlier we admitted 337, as that was Mr. Thomas.
I'm sorry, Counsel, can you tell me those numbers one more time?
327 through 337.
And thank you for gifting a membership. The prosecution's not going to call anyone because they already asked them their questions when the state called them.
My notes show that it was admitted, but either way, we have no objection to that.
Okay, and that's what my notes show as well, that those would have been part of a stipulated group from, Tuesday of last week, so.
And then the last of the depositions should be 338 through 344, and I believe we've already all agreed and admitted those.
Yes, I show that those have all been admitted.
346, and 352 got left off that page.
In the United States, when you get charged with a crime,
346 and 352 is admitted.
You have the right to
355
request a jury trial.
355 is admitted.
So the only one we would be asking to admit that the state's objecting to it this time is the deposition of Jake Firehelm from 2023, marked as 323. Applicant recognizes Mr. Firehelm did testify, but his deposition had to be utilized multiple times during his testimony to refresh him or to correct his testimony. And we think it's appropriate at this time to ask the court to admit it for the proper weight of what it was used for.
Counsel?
And the state would object to the admission of the deposition. And I would just note for clarity of the record that this was a discovery deposition. I believe it was taken before the state even had the benefit of receiving discovery. Not that there was any problem with that, given the timing of when it occurred, that was to be expected. However, given the timing, the fact that it was a discovery deposition, it, in the state's opinion, does not make sense to admit it. And as Mr. Firehelm testified in his testimony here on Friday, confirmed that he did not have his own file when he had that deposition. I believe the parties were able to adequately impeach or refresh his recollection based on his deposition, so his testimony should remain as what he gave in court.
Any further argument in support of your request to admit 323, Ms. Nichols-Cook?
Your Honor, I think our goal here is a complete record for the court to have, and it is additional sworn testimony that Mr. Firehelm gave in addition to the affidavit that he signed and was shown. And I believe the deposition will assist the court in evaluating his credibility and his testimony this week.
323 will be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, I believe the parties have an agreement as to Exhibit 371. This is a DCI Google search comparison chart created by Roman Gamble, and we would seek to admit it.
I show 371 as having been previously admitted.
I believe it was referred to during Sheriff Hemeseth's testimony. However, in any event, we have no objection to it. I believe he laid sufficient foundation for that.
Okay. If it wasn't previously admitted, it will be at this point.
All these are just reading assignments for the judge. Homework. We will not be hearing these depositions.
Your Honor, I know in our last witness we talked about 375, the jail call records. We would still move to admit for the court's consideration just the September 22nd, 2019 phone call recording that is within that exhibit. It may be more of an offer of proof because of the objections that were made to its admission and ask that it be admitted as an offer of proof.
They're going to object to that. Their eyes.
375 was
Yes,
the number. Okay.
There's many phone call recordings within that electronic exhibit, and we're just specifically asking for the September 22nd, 2019 call. I apologize, I don't have a better way of identifying it for you.
Okay. I guess to the extent it's being, or the court's being asked to consider it as an offer of proof, any additional record you wish to make on that point, Mr. Bakke?
Yes, Your Honor. The state objects to the admission of the jail call for the reasons already stated and addressed in the record, hearsay, among others. I guess I'm confused what the purpose of admitting it for an offer of proof would be at this point when no additional witness testimony is expected. So we would object to its admission.
Sustain that one.
Well, the court will consider it as an offer of proof, just so that it is part of the record for purposes of any further proceedings in this matter.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Like what, appeal?
Or even refile that.
Just that one.
All right. And I know we have some other exhibits to talk about. Ms. Nichols-Cook, does that address all of the additional witness testimony that was coming in on behalf of the applicant through deposition?
Yes, Your Honor. There's one topic regarding Mr. Saber's deposition. The exhibits used in that deposition are separate exhibits on this court's trial exhibit list. And I know the state had some objections to some of those. And I don't know if the court would like me to identify which ones I believe are referenced in Saber's deposition for the record, or what's the best way to do that?
That's probably the best way to do it if they're not all contained within the same exhibit. So Mr. Saber's deposition is which number?
320, what? 323? 325.
Okay. And then the exhibits that go with Mr. Saber's deposition.
That would start at 219, Your Honor.
Okay.
220.
This is the first post-conviction relief civil suit we've ever watched.
Yes, 223, I'm sorry.
Interesting process.
234. 235. 236. 237. 238. 239, 240, actually through 246, and then 247 through 252.
Put a poll question up. Should Todd Mullis get a new trial? Todd's the gentleman in orange, convicted of murdering his wife with a corn rake.
And
serving a life sentence currently. If he fails here, that life sentence will continue.
I believe those are all the ones referenced in that deposition.
We did read the appellate court's response early on in this trial.
So some of these are on my list of previously referenced exhibits that were problematic. I don't know if those are the ones that you're referring to, or if it is some of the newly identified exhibits that are troublesome, I guess. Mr. Bakke or Mr. Duden, did one of the two of you wish to identify which exhibits are objected to, or do you need a minute to confer?
Take your time. Living Ghost, I'm on board with this same sentiment that he could have fired his lawyers at any time if he didn't like the trial strategy. But he got up in his opening statements and said this was a murder, and that was the first time Todd had heard.
Only to what we had previously expressed during our pre-trial motions as well, that we would ask that those exhibits and depositions be considered for their weight because they do contain hearsay, rather than more so for the truth of the matter asserted. But we would also note that 252 has been previously admitted as a part of 233. I believe it's the later pages of 233 are in the middle section. Either way, for clarity of the record, we don't have an issue because it's cumulative and the court's already admitted it. And subject to the state's objection on the use of hearsay testimony in those exhibits, we don't have any objection to those being included here.
What is the deputy behind him doing? Some sort of sign language? Doesn't look like ASL or BSL. Familiar with a little bit of both of those.
All right, so $325, the deposition of Bob Savers was previously admitted. And then as I understand it, 219, 220, 223, 234, 235, 236, 237, 238, 239, 240 through 246, 247 through 252, and 278 will also be admitted, subject to any prior orders of the court limiting those exhibits. And it's possible that at least one of those was already previously admitted, I guess.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. I think after that it takes us into exhibits related to expert testimony. I believe those would be Exhibit 274, Dr. Bowley's report, 279, Dr. Weck's report, 285, Dr. Nye's report, 276, the portion that is Dr. Hammer's report, 281, Mr. Safaric's report, that we would move to admit those. I understand the state has raised a concern that they could be improperly used to bolster or vouch the experts who did testify. However, expert witnesses are allowed to rely on other information and data under Rule 703. This is something they testified they normally do in the course of offering an expert opinion. The data in 703 is not hearsay. It's also, This is a bench trial, and again, the court can afford their proper weight to these exhibits, and it goes to more than just, what Dr. Hammers and Dr. Nye testified to. It shows the prejudice of counsel's errors at the trial, and provides that context for the court and the record of what is being discussed and reviewed. So even the reports don't have to be admitted for the truth of what they're saying, but it's for their use under 703.
Response on behalf of the state.
Yes, Your Honor. As the court knows, we have always objected to the inclusion especially of the reports and information present in this case from non-testifying experts. Those reports are being offered, in our opinion, either for a vouching purpose or for the truth of the matter asserted, and therefore our hearsay that would be impermissible for inclusion of the record here. But for the use of those reports, subject to the state's objection, we have no issue with the court taking it under advisement if they would like to evaluate it, given that prior discussions have occurred for instance, of Dr. Nye's first report as a mere report of vouching to the credibility determinations of Dr. Bowley or Boley, who did not testify here. In subject to our hearsay objection, I don't think there's any way around considering them for their truth value. So we would ask that they remain to be excluded in subject to the court's determination, but no further arguments necessary on these because we've maintained our objections from the very beginning and before we came to trial.
Tony,
the expert reports will be admitted subject to those objections, and my final order will clarify, I guess, to what extent, if at all, the court considers the opinions of the experts. Well, and let me clarify. I'm going to defer my determination of admission of the expert reports, and my final order will indicate to you what is admitted, because I do need to review those in more detail to determine if I can separate out any portion of the report that should not be admitted. And primarily that deals with the information from Boley.
It's a lot of homework.
Under the case law and under the rule, it really is the Boley report that is problematic. I don't think that there is any way of interpreting the inclusion of Boley's report in Dr. Nye's report, for example, as anything other than a conduit for getting Boley's opinion in when it otherwise wouldn't come in. And that is not permissible under our rules and under our case law. And so I think it can be excised in all likelihood without damaging or taking away that portion of the work that Dr. Nye did, certainly from her second report. But I will clarify for the parties in a written ruling that in fact that is what I have done. And so with regard to the experts, that will be the plan that we follow with those reports.
Can I get clarity on just which exhibit numbers? I was a little slow in writing them down. I apologize.
Sure. So Boley, I believe, is, her separate report is identified as 274. Let me just double check my numbers here. Yeah, 274. Wecht is 279. Nye is 285. Hammers is 276. And Safarik is 281.
And then, Your Honor, my friends in appeals would be remiss if I didn't ask to do this, but regarding the jail call that was submitted for the offer of proof, if I can read the name of that file into the record just so everyone is clear going forward what we were talking about, if there's no objection.
Go ahead.
My records show it is called 687-308-34 _. 392804 _ 09-22-2019 _08-12-58. And there's more to it, but I believe that should be sufficient to identify.
Thank you for that. I'm sure that'll be helpful for the court too in locating the particular call to the extent I would need to. So. Okay. Ms. Nichols-Cook, anything else that you wish to address with regard to exhibits?
Your Honor, I know that we all agree the underlying record is a part of this proceeding. I think we've realized we did not file the motion for new trial sentencing transcript from September 4th, 2020. And we would like that to be a part, of course, of the record. And if there's no objection, we can upload that today. And it would be like 978, I think.
Any objection to that, counsel?
No, Your Honor, it's already part of the record. If it's easier to have it filed here, no objection.
It doesn't make any difference to me. I mean, if you wish to have it marked as a separate exhibit in this file, that's fine. But certainly by statute, the underlying case file would be considered part of this record. So it's up to you, counsel, if you wish to have it marked separately.
I think so, Your Honor.
Okay.
Just for clarity, what's 977?
An email that a fire home was shown? Right? Cool.
Many keyboards died in the course of this trial.
So 978 was the number you said you would use for that? Okay, and that will be admitted.
Your Honor, the next thing on my list is to address the photographs that were submitted as exhibits. Obviously, we did not show or utilize every photograph that had been proposed. And I think that we can identify a handful of them that we know were shown to witnesses that we believe should be a part of the record, but we also don't oppose the admission of additional photographs or the group exhibit in its entirety, if that's what the court would like.
dropped something.
So I show, for example, 500 through 580 as having been admitted, which I believe are all photos. And I know that we didn't, or the witness didn't talk specifically about all of those, but I do show that they've been admitted. Also 600 through 655, which I believe are all photos. And again, I know they weren't all specifically referenced, but I do show that they were admitted.
I believe 700 through 734 are DCI photographs. We would have no objection to those. I believe only 731 has been admitted thus far, but for what it's worth, we would not object to the 700 series.
Okay. Did you wish to offer those then at this time?
We would offer those then.
Okay. All right, so 700 through 734 will be admitted. I know, I think there are probably some other photos sprinkled in through there, but those are the big groups that catch my eye.
Your Honor, I had 3 in the 900 series that related to Dr. Nye's testimony, and I'm happy to just identify those 3 for the record if that works.
I show 929 and 938 as being admitted.
Okay.
976, I think we were arguing about.
And I think for clarity, the photos are 800 through 975, so the third one that I have down is 890.
And I show 890 as being admitted.
Faye, welcome. Good to have you here and chat with us.
And we're not seeking the admission of the rest of the Dr. Nye photos.
Some important paperwork, crossing the I's, dotting the T's, or vice versa. Thanks for checking in, OG Boy Mama X3. Still expect as soon as this is done to go right into closings, which will only be about half an hour long total. Somebody has to do real work.
Counsel, we would move to admit Exhibit 976 related to Dr. Nye's additional records, with the understanding that these would be for the courts to assist the court in understanding the testimony and as additional offers of proof, if not directly admissible on their own.
Any response, counsel?
Yes, Your Honor. The state has, conveyed fundamental issues with the 14-page supplemental information that was included with Dr. Nye's testimony. Certainly, I think the parts that are worked with or were worked with during her testimony fall on pages 12 and 14. 12 being her calculation page that was referred to, and 14 being the citation page or references page. The state has no issue with the admission of pages 12 and 14. The rest is a little bit wonky, given that it is aspects or portions of other admitted exhibits, not Dr. Nye's work, but kind of like a drop document that was used for things that she'd want to refer to later. So we would object based upon hearsay and the inclusion specifically, as it wasn't in her expert reports, but would simply ask that the court accept the 14-page document subject to the state's objection and reserve ruling on it like the other expert report information specifically, given that it also includes portions of other experts' reports, like Dr. Hammer's, Dr. Boley.
Matt H., congratulations on 22 months.
Information or demonstratives.
Right, 976 then will be treated in the same fashion as the, I guess, the substantive expert reports will be.
Rebecca, welcome back. Good to see you here. Connie Munster, welcome to the gallery. Thank you. Laura Fry, 8 months. Best channel for healing back surgery. Should put that on our about info.
Any additional exhibit issues to address on behalf of the applicant?
Your Honor, we are waiting a signed stipulation declaration regarding exhibits 390 through 396.
Laura Papa, thank you very much.
There'll be 2 declarations from court administration that to authenticate and lay the foundation for those exhibits. We would ask to be allowed to move those in upon receipt of those declarations.
15 months on the jury.
Any
Papa, thank you.
objection to that on behalf of the state?
We don't know what the full declarations look like, so we would ask that the court allow us to defer. We don't anticipate there being any issue with the declarations, but some of the information was still kind of outstanding or highlighted within the judicial branch's declaration page.
Okay, I guess on that issue then we technically probably just need to leave the record open to receive those.
Sorry, Your Honor, we just received the signed one, so maybe if we circle back to this in 5 minutes.
Certainly, that works just fine. We'll do that.
Your Honor, I just had a couple left on my list to make a formal record on that the applicant does seek to admit the affidavit of Carrie Piersbacher as identified as Exhibit 215, the affidavit of Jake Firehelm in 224, the affidavit of Donald Potabom in 379, as well as the transcript of the November 10th, 2018 911 call, identified as Exhibit 294.
Response on behalf of the state.
To the extent, I do apologize that I was looking at the portions for the declarations. If my understanding is we're asked about the affidavit specifically?
Yes, of Carrie Piersbacher, Gerald Firehelm.
Mr. Potabom.
And then the transcript from the 911 call.
Yes, Your Honor, we would renew our objections to the admission of affidavits. I believe on Monday the court made clear on the record with regard to Carrie Piersbacher that affidavits wouldn't be admitted for the testimonial purposes that they've been sought for, especially for Mr. Potabom, for instance. We believe that testimony would be uncrossed and relatively inadmissible or misleading for the court, so it would be objected to on those grounds. We believe each one constitutes hearsay, and we already addressed, I believe, Ms. Pierschbacher's affidavit, but we did allow, without objection, the admission of her report. So her affidavit was unnecessary, but we would renew our objections to the remainder of the affidavits. As for the transcript of the 911 call, our position is, as we've said previously, we object to it on a hearsay ground, specifically that the record speaks for itself. The 911 call was subject to the Court of Appeals opinion. It was subject to being played in the underlying case for the trial, and certainly the court has engaged in some portions or prior rulings in the summary judgment phase or summary disposition phase here as it relates to those 911 calls and potential enhancements. Should the court wish to receive the certified transcript not for its truth value but to assist or clarify the testimony of, say, Mr. Firehelm, for instance, we have no issue with the court receiving that subject to our objection and that it wouldn't be considered for its truth of the matter asserted.
The three affidavits that are being offered will not be admitted. Exhibit 294, I believe, is the 911 transcript. Will be admitted.
I believe that is all I have, Your Honor. And then we do have a list going of demonstrative exhibits that we identified during testimony. And we would like perhaps a little time to provide that to counsel and then present them.
Yes, I guess there was a question between the parties, the best way to file those. In past cases I've seen where the court files them as court exhibits, but beyond that, we don't have any problem with making a complete record. Our friends on the appellate side will appreciate the clarity.
Yeah, I do think they need to be made a part of the record, but it is important to distinguish them from the actual exhibits, and so I'm fine calling them court exhibits or demonstratives, just so that we're careful to keep them separate. They were all, I guess, paper, which helps, but if you would like to gather those up, and you can provide them to me if you would like before we leave here today, and I can make sure that they get into the record. That's fine.
Thank you, Your Honor.
For purposes of closings, given that the demonstratives have been referred to fairly repeatedly as the same letters that cross over with the state's exhibits, referring to them as demonstrative D or whatever would be probably the easiest way of going forward. Is that okay with the court as well?
It is, yes.
Thank you. And we'll refer to ours for purposes of the record too, with the court's permission. I think making a good record here is probably the easiest part. We refer to our exhibits as exhibits A, B, C, D, F, G, H, and I believe. But we did not admit exhibit E, and we have filed them as PCR-A, etc., simply because the underlying record, the other ones were unavailable. So we would ask that the court recognize or accept that while we may speak to our exhibits or the exhibits that have been admitted here as A, B, C, etc., that those exhibits be understood to mean PCR-A or B, etc.
Certainly, and I did note that in the electronic record and understood the correlation and the reason why they were labeled that way.
Sure. Thank you, Your Honor.
Anything else as far as exhibits? or clarifications for the record on behalf of the applicant? Just one moment. Sure.
We have executed a stipulation that the state will file here in a moment regarding Amy Burnell. And I think Your Honor, can I verify that Exhibit 314 medical records, which I don't believe was an objection to, was admitted?
I do not show 314 as having been admitted.
I likewise do not show it as admitted. I don't believe we have an objection to them, especially considering that we stipulated on Dr. Thompson's deposition and files. However, given that it is medical information and has unredacted information as would be expected, we would ask for that to be at a heightened security level. I believe a level 1 would be adequate.
Okay. 314 will be admitted.
I don't believe I have anything else, Your Honor.
Hey, we might be done. Ready for closings?
Your Honor, I'll ask it this way, and I believe there was some question about security levels on a few of the exhibits. I believe most of the problematic ones weren't offered, so it should be minimal, but I don't know if maybe additional time before they're formally admitted, if the parties can, or if Mr. Mullis's counsel already knows if there's any additional ones that might need a heightened security level.
So other than 314 that we just talked about, I can tell you that the only other one that I have a note on right now as needing a higher security level is 400.
Your Honor, I think the applicant would have no objection to any of the medical examiner photos being filed at a high security level, or Dr. Thompson's photo collection.
We have no objection with that. The 500 and 600 series photos. I do note, for whatever reason, it appears that they might not have been filed at a heightened security level in the underlying case. It's my opinion that had to have been an oversight. I don't know if that's something we can also resolve while the parties are all here.
Grab the documents.
But
the underlying case.
I think that if everyone is in agreement, I can probably address that.
Your Honor, the applicant would have no objection to increasing the security level of the photos in the criminal case. I think additionally there's a couple of photos in the 200s that were used in depositions that have been admitted that would also require a higher security level, and perhaps the autopsy report. So like 225 through 229.
As well as the state's Exhibit B, which is an autopsy report as well.
I've got notes on those.
We're almost done.
The security level will be addressed in the court's exhibit management order. I believe that directs the parties to file any additions or corrections within 10 days or something to that effect. So certainly if the parties identify any additional changes that should be made with regard to not only the exhibits that are identified as having been admitted, but also the security levels that are established, certainly feel free to bring that to the court's attention so that changes can be made. I know that it's easier for clerk staff and certainly less work if it can be done up front rather than later on. So.
And I do, just as I was scrolling through this list, I do recognize there's probably going to be additional, such as 216, the EMT report has a date of birth. So maybe, so we do this once, if the court would be willing to defer filing of the exhibit order so the parties have time to go through the exhibits just to identify any confidential material or attempt to.
That's certainly fine, counsel. If you'd like to confer and send me an email within the next day or two, we can wait to file that. That's not a problem at all.
Thank you.
And Your Honor, I can confirm that the stipulation filing reached between the parties has been electronically signed, but also filed for the court's review and agreement here regarding Miss Amy Burnow's testimony.
All right, thank you. And then, I guess maybe so I don't forget, I'll come back to the declaration and exhibits from court administration. I think that was 390 through 396. Has everybody had a chance to look at that, or do we need a little more time on that one?
It's been redacted. I believe it's been redacted, right?
I believe the 390 through 396 portions for the jury management questionnaires or jury related information has all already been redacted and provided, and the state has no dispute about the admission or foundation of that testimony or those exhibits being admitted here.
Okay. So the 390 through 396 will be admitted if I don't think they were previously.
Your Honor, I'm sorry, there was one more related to the jury discussion. It's Exhibit 397. It's a U.S. Census Bureau report. We would ask the court to take judicial notice of that exhibit.
Any objection to that, counsel?
Your Honor, I don't think we have any issue with the information in that exhibit being accepted as census information or anything like that. To the extent that the court wants to take judicial notice of that information, then we have no dispute or really any issue with it being admitted as census information.
Well, yeah, and I guess I understand the request to be that I would take judicial notice of it rather than admit it as an exhibit. So I'll notice it. So
thank you, Your Honor.
Yep.
Ashley, they say they haven't changed anything. We're seeing some of the older OG members who got gifted
I'll jump over
memberships
to
early
state
on
maybe
start
for
to get
now.
them again,
Any
but it's been slow.
witness stipulations, exhibit issues on behalf of the state? I have not necessarily cross-referenced my list of notes as far as outstanding exhibit issues. Maybe for fear we'll discover more, but I think we've hit
the wall.
Certainly the major things as far as exhibit reports.
I guess the only clarification, just to make sure that your list matches ours, that it's all except Exhibit E has been admitted. Then I believe we have covered everything as far as my notes reflected.
Yeah, that's both sides saying you've done them.
Parties
Are we done?
compared notes as far as which exhibits of the applicants they think have been admitted.
No.
But we can do so when we verify our final list and information. We can either do it now, Your Honor, or we can do it at the time we do the protected information, but probably for purposes of closing, it might be easier just to do our closings and then verify that information after the fact, given the
record's going to be open
numerical
anyway.
changes and things like that.
I mean, it seems to me like it would be prudent just to be 100% certain that everybody's on the same page as far as what exhibits have been admitted before we leave here. I understand it's tedious and not super exciting to sit here and do that on the record, so we definitely don't need to do that, but maybe before you leave here today, and also just to make sure that my list appears to match as well, would be a good idea, because obviously there are a lot of exhibits in this case. But with that said, if you think that we have addressed all of the kind of lingering cleanup issues that we needed to, if you would like maybe a short break before closings, we could do that and then come back and wrap up.
Yes, Your Honor, the last thing I had to put on the record was that the court's order regarding summary judgment, any motion to reconsider or enlarge would be due for this Friday, and the applicant would just request an extension to consider that.
The state's position?
If I recall correctly, the summary order regarding the court's positions on summary judgment said a longer order was forthcoming. Should the court be open to it, as well as applicants' counsel, I believe that the state would just request the opportunity for that deadline to toll until after the court's full ruling speaks to it, so that the actual questions and issues can be responded to specifically in addressing the court's specific decisions.
Yeah. I kind of like that idea. That maybe seems to me to be the most efficient use of everybody's time. Counsel for the applicant, does that
No
work for you
objection
guys?
to that plan, Your Honor.
Okay. So we'll plan on that approach, and just to have less dates to keep track of, maybe, if nothing else.
We're going to close out the poll here in just a minute.
All right.
Question is, should Todd Mullis get a new trial?
Matter, I believe the court indicated brief deadlines would be addressed. Do you want to do that now or at the end?
We can talk about that now. Do either of you have a request as far as how long you would like to submit final legal authority to the court? I think I mentioned earlier, I'm not contemplating anything extensive. And really, unless you're telling me you are wanting something more substantial, I'm contemplating a one-shot 5-page limit focusing on legal authority that you believe is on point and controlling.
Case law.
And any particular testimony or evidence from the depositions that wasn't on the record these last few days, because I do have extensive notes from the testimony that we've been listening to. So if there's something that you want to draw my attention to from those depositions, obviously I will read them, but if there's something that you want to highlight, you could do that within that 5-page limit. Yeah, go ahead.
It's my understanding from what the court indicated previously that the court would consider the legal briefing on these issues that we already laid out in our summary.
Absolutely, right, which is part of my rationale in suggesting a very limited final brief. Both parties have spent a significant amount of time already briefing the legal issues in this matter. All of that is in the court file. I have access to it. I've reviewed it, familiar with it, and so I don't know that rehashing all of it again is useful for anybody or a good use of your time at this point. So certainly to highlight the most critical pieces now that you know how the evidence has come in is fine, but to go much further than that I don't think is particularly helpful. So.
Your Honor, at this point, I think my proposal, unfortunately, would be to ask for 30 days, in part because part of our team is out of the country later this month, and I just to make sure that we could get all of our thoughts together and complete that. I know 5 pages isn't that much, but
April 4th is a Friday.
Means no decision at least until after then.
Otherwise, March 31st would be exactly 4 weeks from today.
I think we could probably...
Your Honor, there is a major conference that I think a number of people on applicant's side are attending, that the first day of which is April 4th, and I have some professional responsibilities at that conference. I can't move, unfortunately. I don't know if it'd be possible to make this do the 8th instead.
The 8th of April.
Yes. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Does that date work for the state?
Is the court seeking simultaneously filed?
Yes. Yep. Just a one.
Yes.
ASCLD
I feel that.
symposium.
Yes, the deadline works wonderfully.
Okay. So April 8, 2025 by 4:30 p.m.
What do you think it is? Do you think it's the American Academy of Forensic Sciences?
Okay, if we plan on coming back at 3 o'clock for final arguments.
It's a 20-minute break.
15 minutes, and a final 5-minute rebuttal.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, I'll see you then.
All right, so they step away for a wee break, and we get to I don't know, listen to a song or something. Might see if we can bring in a little bit of court hopping in the meantime. This all the busy work, the paperwork, the checking the boxes and finalizing things appears to be done for the most part. There's a little bit more that can come in, but we will not see a decision from the judge here until at least April 8th, which is the deadline that you just gave for the final 5-page argument, written argument. We break or we break, both work. Very short closings. The judge doesn't need. Here's why she does this. She doesn't need the drama that oftentimes is provided for the benefit of the jury. She's got all the evidence. She's got all the information. She's listened. She's kept notes. She's been here for the entirety of it, and she doesn't want the drama. She just wants the meat. She's like, just give me the bare the bare bones, the what do I need to take away from this right here? And cutting the closing time down to 15 minutes on each side definitely does that. So it still should be a little spicy opening. So Karen Reed had new filings today. If you're interested, I am interested. I think she's got a hearing tomorrow. Or Corey Richens, the other KR case. I think they both have hearings tomorrow. There was another arrest in the D. Warner case. Man, crazy. The ABA Tech Show in Chicago, April 2nd through 5th. What are they doing the 8th? On the 4th, they're going to a convention, a big convention. The only thing I could see that was crime-related was the ASCLD Symposium in Denver, Colorado, from April 4th to April 8th, where the theme is Forensic Synergy, Uniting Knowledge, Driving Excellence. The symposium will highlight the importance of collaboration in forensic science. I think that would be of particular interest to Innocence Project type group like this one. Let's see. See if there are any other upcoming murder conferences. There's actually a webpage for this. Let's see. Southern Fried Crime Con. They could be going there. Southern Fried Crime Con, April 4th and 5th. Keynote speaker Wanda Morris. We've got Quies Polar in France. Probably not that. Well, could be that one. Quies Polar in France, April 4th through 6th. And then the Hamptons Whodunit is East Hampton Village in New York. Is April 10th through 13th. There's one in Wales on April 25th through 25th. GY with a funny accent over it. YL Crime CYMRU Festival. And then Suffolk, UK on April 26th is Skullduggery in Stowmarket. Stowmark. You can't make these things up. Los Angeles Times Festival of the Book. And Malice Domestic in Bethesda, Maryland. That's April. Those are the murder conferences in April. Mathis says, if you have 32 minutes, I found great oral arguments. Mathis, we don't quite have 32 minutes. That could also be it. Very, very good choice there, Haley May. So many options to go to. Week in the Karen Reed case. We were planning on covering Mr. Cremo, or Crimo, depending on how you say his name, who was the July 4th parade shooter, but he pled guilty. Surprise, surprise, last minute, pled guilty this morning to all charges. So we'll have to go elsewhere. That's all right. There's more cases than one. Let's see. Mod chat. See, we might have time for this one. Did he take a plea deal? No, just pled guilty. Just straight guilty across the board. Have they done their closings? No, we're waiting for that right now. There's about a 20-minute break, about 15 minutes now, and then they're going to give their closings. We will have to wait until April. Yeah, it might be a stretch to get an answer in April, but possibly towards the mid to end of April is the soonest I would expect a decision from this judge on this case. But closings are coming soon, and they're going to be quick. Was it just the Mullis side that called witnesses? Yes, Jackie. The reason why is the state would have called the same witnesses, but they got to ask them all the questions they wanted, and do leading and lead all the way through because they were on cross. So they accomplished all of their goals evidentiary, evidence-wise, by cross-examining the witnesses, and so they had no need to call them themselves. So they basically rested with no witnesses. Burden is on Mullis' side. I'm popping in and out every other word. Test 1 2, check 1 2, test. Show's a little quiet. Test 1 2. That's a little better. Hot. You might want to refresh your page. The audio breaking up. Oh, if it's breaking up for more people, it's not just you. I missed your question. I missed a lot of questions. Let's see, purple. Does Walmart have a murder conference? I think it's just a suppliers get together. So yes. Do you have a podcast or anything happening tonight? We have 2 podcasts this week, one on Thursday, one on Saturday. Thursday is our very own Not Relevant podcast with myself and Thomas. On Saturday, I will be a guest on Valhalla Awaits for a Lego stream. It should be about a 3-hour Lego building stream with an interview mixed all the way through it. Very laid back. I'm looking forward to it a lot. My Lego set arrives tomorrow. I'm not telling anybody what set I got. I want it to be a surprise. That way nobody can object and say, what? It only has 10 pieces? That's not fair. It's got more pieces than that. But I think it's one that nobody's done on their show yet. Can't get over the wildfire in South Carolina by Myrtle Beach. It is crazy. Relaunching YouTube fixed it. There's the link to the Lego build with Valhalla Awaits. I did see that the Vice baby, Connor, was in chat here a minute ago. He is also going to be on with Valhalla Awaits, I think the week after me. So that's going to be awesome. I'm going to have to watch his as well. Do you know what happened to Vicky? She quit streaming. I don't know. I know that she's a busy girl and she has a lot of things going, and streaming worked for her. Sometimes when you run into a hiccup with YouTube and they object to some way you do things, which might have happened in her case, people just stop. So I thought I saw her around a while back. There's a wildfire less than a mile from my house in North Carolina. Sadie, stay safe and keep the fire away from my house. I'm also in North Carolina. Jay Reno says it's only a 16-piece kit. We'll have it put together in 2 days. You guys, I'm better than that. I was the first in chat on the Lego stream. Nikki, that's awesome. She's been in Judge McBurney's chat on his court YouTube channel. Judge McBurney had an interesting case the other day with the performer, I guess you could say. It was a civil case where there was a promoter and a performer, some Sexy Red or something like that, who was, I believe, a rapper that was supposed to perform at an event. And the rapper says, well, here's what happens. If you want to hire me, it's going to cost you, I don't know what it was, like $30,000 for me to come and perform. And when I get there, I need to have like 5 of those giant bottles of, I don't know what it was, Don something, wine or liquor of some sort. And I need an envelope with $15,000 cash in it. And this is what the writer is, right? That goes along with booking this person. And they did all these steps, apparently. And then she showed up with her entourage. They grabbed all the alcohol, and I guess she just split. She's like, all right, thanks, see ya, no performance. She was supposed to hang around and entertain. And she's like, I got what I came for. Yeah, so, and she didn't show up for the hearing, so the ruling automatically went against her. Anyway, I was checking that one that happened on Friday, I believe. I think it was Sexy Red. Sexy Red. 15,000 in cash is shady. It seems that way. It's like you paid her in like non-sequential $100 bills in a manila envelope. I've actually got the recording of it, but it's not that interesting.
I saw a chicken fight.
Saw a chicken fighting. Yeah, that was McBurney's chat that had that one, or McBurney's case. Were the bills wet and stapled together? I'm not going to go there, but it was Sexy Red, the rapper. Brooke says you should have a second channel for ASMR. So many ASMRists are over 1 million.
Thank you, sir. You're my new best
And all you need is good audio. Check. Oh, I can do it. I can be like... And now we have the judge walking into the courtroom. She's wearing her black robe again. I could do that. I could do that. I could totally do an ASMR channel. But then if I sneezed or something, people would sue me. I'd have like class action lawsuits for blowing out people's eardrums. What bills does Don Adelson reference? Got stand ASMR. Kaylee May's like, not gonna lie, that was a little creepy. If I ever do an ASMR channel like that, I can tell you one thing: I'm not going to be on camera, and I'm not going to tell you guys about it. that would be terrible. Is that your sultry voice? No, this is my my mellow golf announcer voice. Now approaching the 18th hole. Caddy has a bit of pep in his step. Just checking the wind now. Looks like it's going to be a straight shot to the green. Yeah, it's like that. It's golf. I do have a golf voice. The thing about the golf announcers is they can't talk too loud. It throws everybody off. All right. We'll find it anyway, says Greeners. Trust me, we'll find it. I'd love to hear that your stickers are arriving. If for some reason stickers have not arrived, I know there's one person, I think Mel, I think your stickers are still in the mail. I just dropped some off this morning, but everyone else's stickers should be there. I've given away all but one pack of stickers. So I think I only have one more to send out, and that's, well, two more. I've got to send some to Canada, and I've got to send some. I've got an envelope that just came today. So, all right. Could be called ASMR Addict. You would find it in a heartbeat if I did that. Kiki D got a 10-pack. Thank you very much. That supports the channel as well. Amber's like, what do I need to find? No, I'm not doing it. We were joking about doing an ASMR channel and cranking up the volume and me just narrating something. I don't know. Maybe I could do like one of those sleep channels. I could do like the self-hypnosis where I just have that soft little, chimes and stuff in the background. And now your eyes are becoming heavy. I could do that. I could do that. Yeah. Let's do that. Let's schedule one of those for a late night. The problem is I'd fall asleep in the middle of it. That's what would happen. All right. What's the story behind Recovery Addict name? Northwest, that is a great question. And since we have a bit of time, I'm going to answer it for you. I chose the Recovery Addict name probably back in 2016 when I was getting into metal detecting quite heavily. And I was addicted to recovering artifacts from the ground. Things like coins, pull tabs, nails, more pull tabs, more nails, and occasionally rings and, some treasure here and there. I started a YouTube channel, and I wanted to live stream my metal detecting, which I did a couple of. And I found a gold ring live on a live stream one time. I found a gold coin. It's the only gold coin I've ever found in my life. But I did also find that most people did not want to watch me metal detecting. So I stopped. I stopped filming it and posting the videos onto YouTube. I had a job that was phenomenal, working for the Department of Defense. It was classified. I can't tell you much about it, but it was fun, and I worked myself out of that job. Like, we worked to the end and completed the contract. I was out of work for about 7 months, looking for work, knowing I wanted to stay where I lived right now in North Carolina and do what I was doing before, and the two didn't match up. And after about 7 months of being out of work and spending all the money that I earned, I started live streaming just a court case. It was Darrell Brooks. And I started live streaming on the only channel I had that had live streaming enabled, and that was the Recovery Addict channel. The channel already existed, but it had like almost no subscribers. And it took about 4 days to get a couple thousand subscribers, which was amazing. Doesn't happen like that. And so it has stuck. Now, the Recovery Addict name means something else to me, because I was, at one point in my life, heavily involved in gaming, electronic gaming, like computer games. That was my addiction. World of Warcraft was my go-to game, and I spent more hours on that game than you could possibly imagine. And through some great support group, including my wife, I was able to get more balance in my life. And so Recovery Addict for me is, it has multiple meanings. And so when I say, I'm the Recovery Addict, it's both metal detecting and addiction recovery. And so we celebrate everyone who's on their path to sobriety here on the channel with whatever the addiction is. And that's it. Yeah, Heidi, it's both. But I'm not trying to recover from the metal detecting. As a matter of fact, I think I have 5 metal detectors now, which is funny because you really only use one at a time. They sort of fight with each other when you're too close to each other. WoW is particularly addictive. Yes. Is Greener's Mrs. R.A.? No. That's a great question, though. I'm addicted to sugar, Bella. We won't talk about the food I'm addicted to. Celestial Force said, I've never gone into your store. I love that this is my prison escape hoodie. Oh man, I found another article to add to my wardrobe. That was the hoodie we made when we were following the Cavalcante manhunt up in PA. And it was a lot of fun. I'm not in recovery from my Diet Coke addiction. It is still in full force. Heidi, I have some of those demons as well. I'm working on my diet now. I've sort of re-energized my push to lose weight, because I've got a gig that I'm doing this summer. It's only like a 3-day gig, but I'm going to be walking, 5 to 20 miles a day, carrying a whole bunch of gear. I need to be more fit for that. So probably not 20 miles. I'm thinking more 5 to 10 would be accurate. Allison says, that's how I found you, and I've never left. We were still here. Yep. Ivan says, I have no demons and have never gone through anything. Ivan, that's why we love you. You're just perfect the way you are. Oh, man. How do you go from 5 to 20 miles? I'm filming a documentary in the hills of Virginia. And I'll be carrying all my gear because I do not have a support crew. I've got to be solo. There's going to be 2 of us, but I've got to be on my own, just be able to have all the gear, all the batteries, all the cameras, all the mics, the recording gear that I need to film the whole thing. So, and now you're addicted to electronics. Yes, I am. I have a major addiction to electronics, and I love it. Which the way it goes, though, a lot of the stuff that you see on my desk here, like computers and the switcher and I don't know, the Rodecaster, I had those before I started live streaming. I had them early on, and some of them were from failed business models or failed businesses that I tried earlier, doing video production that just didn't pay out. And so I just was able to pick up with the gear that I had and start. Most people, when they're live streaming, don't use the equipment that I use, and that's great. It's actually, I'd recommend not getting the gear I get to start out, because there's a big learning curve on it. And it's hard enough to learn how to live stream without having to learn how to use the equipment to live stream as well. But I love the hardware of this. I went to school for this, so this is like in my blood. I've worked in the news. I've worked in live event production, and worked on TV crews, filming for TV shows and commercials and corporate events and everything else. And so all this stuff just is second nature to me, and I'd prefer to do it this way than software. But I am addicted to that. What was the first trial you live streamed? It was Daryl Brooks. I haven't had a Mountain Dew yet this year. I know that's not saying much because it's barely March, but still, that's 2 months. That's 2 months without a Mountain Dew. Get yourself a mule. You know what? We sell our stickers, right? These guys from Sticker Mule. You said mule, and I thought of that. But Sticker Mule gave me a credit because I like engage with them on social media a lot, and they'll be like, first person to reply with whatever, and you'll win something. And I've won a couple of those, and so they gave me a $50 credit at Sticker Mule. And I bought sauce, hot sauce. They make something called mule sauce, which is like a little bottle of Tabasco sauce, but a little bit sweeter and I think a little hotter, and it's delicious. The Cheetos made up for the dew. Sinbad, you caught me eating it from a bag of them today. I'm going to be able to switch her out of Legos. 6-volt, if you need any like close-up pictures of anything, let me know. Well, I'll get you those. Lent begins on Wednesday. Great time to give up pesky, bad addictions. Ivan says, one of my favorite RA stories is how he looked up how to get a viral TikTok, and it actually worked. Okay, before I started YouTubing, I thought I'll go viral. I want to go viral on TikTok and see if I can make some money working on TikTok, because we were broke. I cannot begin to tell you how broke we were. I was fortunate enough to be able to buy my house when I moved here, but it was to the point where we were going to have to sell the house in the next month. That's how broke we were. And so I did research. I watched TikToks and tried to figure out what makes them go viral and why they go viral. And I made a TikTok specifically to go viral. That was my goal. And it did. Which is funny. It was a little TikTok of me using this little cup, which is it's a clear solo cup, and it has what's called I call it a ball chain. It's like the necklace that's used for dog tags, and you take it and you pull it out, and it just spills all over and does a cool effect where it actually jumps in the air all by itself. It's a science thing. 16.2 million views later, I think I made about $600 off that. But that's pretty hard to replicate over and over again. My girl Angie, been here since Murdoch, never left. Best channel ever. Congratulations on 22 months. Thank you, Angie. Appreciate it. I go viral in live court sometimes. Yeah. We've had a couple moments where the judge has played our live stream in court.
Please be seated.
That was fun. Here we go. Closing arguments.
Okay, we'll go back on the record. Ms. Thompson, you ready to proceed?
I just ended the poll.
Your Honor, Todd Mullis has spoken the truth in this case from day one. He said this was an accident. He asked his attorneys to investigate it as an accident. He gave multiple consistent interviews. He testified at trial. He testified at child guardianship proceedings that are part of the record below from his motion for a new trial. He filed this PCR, a verified PCR. He provided affidavits. His belief has been consistent and has never wavered that this is an accident, that he was in no way involved, and that he wanted his counsel to pursue that issue for him. That's different from other witnesses who testified at this proceeding and whose stories have changed over time. There's nothing that Todd Mullis could have said to this court that he hasn't said before. And that's why this post-conviction hearing has been about all of the evidence that should have been presented at trial to support what he's been saying all along. The court has pointed out that this is an evidentiary hearing, that all of the evidence this court is going to consider is not evidence this court heard in court during the last 6 days. Because as we just went through, the court will have depositions, the court will have documentary evidence, the court will have other evidence from the underlying record that wasn't part of what the court heard, specifically in testimony and at this hearing. But all of that together demonstrates that Todd Mullis's trial was fundamentally unfair, that the system broke down, that he did not receive the fair trial that he deserves. And that is the outcome that Mr. Mullis is asking this court to assist with now. This court really can't think about what Mr. Mullis's claims mean without thinking about what it is that actually happened at his trial. What happened at his trial was that everyone, his own counsel, the state, told this jury that Ms. Mullis's death was a murder. His own counsel agreed in opening statements that Ms. Mullis was murdered, and that belief was allowed to be presented to the jury with zero adversarial testing. I mean, this was the quote-unquote strategy that his counsel pursued at trial. Their strategy was, we're going to concede it's a murder. That's a strategy they reached on the fly, which we'll talk about in a second. And as Mr. Firehelm told this court when he testified here, Todd's going to explain it. Todd will explain all of the evidence, and that is the way that they provided counsel to him through this trial. Their strategy was Todd is going to explain the text messages. Todd is going to explain whether he knew about Ms. Mullis's affair with Mr. Frazier. Todd is going to explain the Google searches. Todd is going to explain the state of his marriage. Todd is going to explain what was happening in this argument between his wife and his mother. Todd's going to explain these hearsay statements from these witnesses. Todd is going to explain without any notice or understanding that he even needed to prepare to think about or testify about this 911 call and what he said and who was there and what he was thinking when he was frantically providing aid to his wife as she was dying. Todd's going to explain the state's circumstantial evidence that is meant to show that he was guilty. And that in effect became a trial where counsel is telling the jury, even though I told you in opening statements that Todd was wrong, believe him that he's not guilty. That is not a reasonable strategy. It's simply not a reasonable strategy, and it and all of the errors that combined cumulatively to deny him a fair trial, denied him a fair trial. There are two Sixth Amendment claims that Mr. Mullis has in this case, and they're different. We talked about these at summary judgment, but I want to talk briefly about them now. One is the Sixth Amendment claim that Todd has the right to be the master of his own defense. And we spent a lot of time on that claim at this hearing, hearing from various witnesses. And I know the court has the law on this that we provided at summary judgment. The law is that Mr. Mullis has to explicitly consent in opening statements, or has to explicitly consent to his counsel conceding his guilt in the trial. He has to explicitly consent if that's the strategy. And from all of the testimony the court heard, from Mr. Firehelm, from Mr. Sabers' deposition that the court will read, from all of Todd's letters and his testimony at the child guardianship proceedings that are in the record. That simply never happened. Todd, this resulted in a situation where his trial counsel conceded his guilt. Conceded his guilt because he told the jury that Amy Mullis was murdered in a situation where the lawyers were going to provide no evidence to establish that that was not Todd Mullis. The evidence is undisputed that Todd Mullis didn't know his counsel was going to do that. The court has Mr. Sabers' deposition, who testified at a deposition, and the court can review this, that he was surprised at opening statements. He was surprised to hear that that was the position the defense was going to take, that Mr. Mullis was surprised. The court has all of his letters. The court has heard from Lynn White. The court will be able to review Todd's testimony in these child custody proceedings. Todd said he never gave counsel permission to do that. All of his letters support that that's not what he understood the strategy was going to be. Mr. Sabers didn't know that was going to be the strategy. That happened without his permission. And we explained already why that's important, because if that happened without his permission, then this isn't a matter of prejudice. It's not a matter of establishing what the outcome would have been if counsel followed a different strategy. That is just a Sixth Amendment violation, period. That really ends the analysis. And on that basis alone, Mr. Mullis receives a new trial. But that's not the only aspect of Sixth Amendment. That's not the only aspect of a Sixth Amendment violation that is present here. We have a more typical ineffective assistance of counsel claim too. And this is very important because in this case, there is no reason, and the court heard no reason from Mr. Firehelm, there is no reason in Mr. Sabers' deposition to explain why it would have been reasonable for trial counsel not to investigate and present evidence that corroborated everything that Mr. Mullis testified to at trial. To investigate and present evidence about medicine, about the electronic evidence, about these Google searches that we've been talking about text messages, about the cameras. There is no reasonable strategy that would have allowed counsel to not pursue any of this evidence, and instead to pursue what they did at trial, which is to concede this was a murder and to let Todd explain himself unaided to the jury. What's important about this, and what we want to make sure the court understands, is that even though in this evidentiary hearing, the applicant has spent a lot of time presenting evidence to the court and proving to the court that Mr. Mullis didn't agree with counsel's strategy, even if Todd Mullis never wrote a single letter to his lawyer, even if he was maybe a person with a little less understanding about the way that biomechanics work, his instincts about what might be true. Even if we had none of these letters, even if we didn't have the vast record we have here that Mr. Mullis was asking about these issues, that he wanted this to be investigated, that he was seeking investigation, that he consistently and unwaveringly believed that his wife's death was an accident, even if none of that was true, and Todd Mullis had just said to his lawyers, give me the best defense you can, I don't know what happened, but do your best. If that's all he ever said, counsel would have still been ineffective. It is not Todd Mullis's job to have told counsel what the right strategy was here. As it so happens, he did. But even if he didn't, it doesn't matter, because there's no reason not to investigate these issues. This is not dependent on what Todd Mullis agreed to or not. It is ineffective for counsel to have chosen the path that they chose, and that is because they chose it without a reasonable investigation. We cited law to the court in our summary judgment briefings, and we will cite more law. The United States versus Hinton, the United States Supreme Court has said that it is ineffective for counsel not to understand science and not to get experts in a case where expertise is required. And Your Honor, this is such a case. This was clearly a medical case. Mr. Firehelm told you, I relied on my own understanding about this. You know, I was first chair, I made these decisions. I relied on my own understanding to decide that there wasn't anything I needed to pursue there. Under Hinton, under the other law that we've cited to the court and that we will cite, that's ineffective. The state may point out when it speaks to the court that in his deposition, Mr. Sabers did describe, as the second chair, as the person who was not making decisions in this case, some of the things that he tried to do, because he did try to do more than Mr. Firehelm did. For instance, he himself went to the shed. He looked at these augers, and he talked about that in his deposition. He also read the case materials, like Mr. Firehelm did. But there's no evidence that Mr. Sabers discussed these issues with Mr. Firehelm other than telling him that he'd visited the shed and looked at these augers. And there's no evidence that Mr. Firehelm did anything that Mr. Sabers asked him to do. the state's own exhibits show this, that there is a email from Mr. Sabers to Mr. Firehelm where they discuss we probably should get an expert. I mean, they knew that Todd was asking them to do that. They agreed they probably should get an expert, and that just didn't happen here. They never provided case materials to an expert, either a pathologist or a biomechanical expert, who could explain to them that there was a defense here, a reasonable defense that they should have followed. They just didn't do that. And Mr. Sabers, doing his best to look at a couple of things, to give advice to Mr. Firehelm that he never followed, that's not a strategy, that's not a decision, that's failing to do what you know you should do. And there's no reason that the state is going to be able to articulate for not following the only reasonable strategy here. That leaves us with the question of what this trial would have been, the prejudice issue of Strickland, if Todd Mullis hadn't been standing alone at his trial without any of the assistance that his counsel was supposed to provide him. If his lawyer wasn't just saying, you know, trust Todd, what would the jury have heard? And at the end of this hearing, especially hearing the evidence the court's heard here in court, considering the other materials as well, the court knows the answer to that. The court knows that if this had been a fair trial with effective assistance, this jury would have heard that this was not a murder. And it would have heard that from sources that are far more credible than the state's witness who testified at trial without any cross-examination, save one question, that this was a murder. This was a medical case. And the court heard extensively, and I know we spent a lot of the court's time making sure that the court could hear the opinions of Dr. Cruz, the opinions of Dr. Hammers, the opinions of Dr. Nye, to decide what the true state of the medicine is. And based on that testimony, there's really no question what the state of the medicine is. This is not a murder. This is not a homicide. This is an accident. Dr. Hammers was able to talk about that from a pathology perspective and explain why, despite there being unopposed testimony offered at trial that Ms. Mullis had defensive wounds, that there was nothing about the state of her body or this autopsy that indicated that she was the victim of a homicide, but that this was an accident from a pathology perspective. The court knows that Dr. Cruz said that she couldn't really figure out how this happened. She just couldn't see any reason that it was an accident, and that is essentially why she determined this was a murder. After 2 to 3 hours of doing this autopsy with other autopsies, she came to that decision, she stuck with it, and she made that decision without the benefit of any biomechanical testimony, any biomechanical advice or assistance. The court has that assistance now from Dr. Nye. Dr. Nye started looking at this case to review the opinions of others, and we're not asking the court to even consider that piece of what she did, because she then went on to do her own investigation. She did her own visit to this scene. She did her own consideration of the wound pattern. She did her own force calculations. The court has her math on her notes where she went through and actually figured this out, figured out the force that would have been required to fall from a standing height, from a kneeling height, figured out the force that would have been required and the direction of the force that would have been required for this to have happened in different ways. And from that biomechanical evaluation, she told the court that the only hypothesis that she can't disprove is that this was an accident. And there is no other biomechanical evidence before this court. If the state wanted to call a biomechanical engineer, or really any witness, to say that Dr. Nye was wrong, they could have done that. That's not what they did. Dr. Nye testified without any opposition. Dr. Cruz said, I really can't speak to those issues. And that's testimony the court has to consider in deciding what the state of the evidence is here. I'll go through the other evidence the court heard briefly, because the medical evidence is the most important. The court heard that despite at trial the unrebutted testimony, save from Mr. Mullis, was that all these searches were from the iPad and that they were very nefarious. And when the court actually gets a chance to see that those searches didn't come from the iPad, that many of them came from other devices, and the actual content of the search, that these searches are related to hunting tests, they're related to television programs. The actual content of the searches and the evidence that they didn't come from the iPad tells you that Todd's testimony was right. The court will have a chance to look at all of these texts and emails which are in evidence, and the court heard from Mr. Safaric and others about what all of this electronic evidence means. And it proves what Todd said, which is that even though his wife was having an affair, this had not bled over into the marriage, that he didn't know about it, that they were living relatively happily, despite the fact that there were sometimes, disputes with a mother-in-law. None of this was creating this situation that resulted in some planning to to end someone's wife's life. I mean, there are text messages with Todd right up until the end of Miss Mullis's life where she's saying, "I love you." The court has Tristan's testimony, and it should evaluate it, that Tristan has explained why he testified as he did and that his dad was really only out of his sight for a short time. The court knows about the 911 call. It heard a lot about that, about the discovery violation that occurred there, and that this was a trial by ambush with respect to this 911 call, and that 911 call is not what the state described, and that Todd was with other people, sheriffs, when that happened. There's a lot of other claims that counsel presented, and the court knows what the evidence about that is. Based on the evidence the court has, it knows that Todd's established his Sixth Amendment claims, it knows he's established an actual innocence claim, and that this is the rare case where, considering these claims separately or cumulatively, that a new trial is really the only fair outcome. I'm going to come back and talk in rebuttal in a minute, but based on what the court's heard, there's no doubt that Mr. Mullis's trial was unfair, and there's just one result from that, Your Honor, which is a new trial.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson.
Wow.
Closing argument on behalf of the state.
Takes me back to debate.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court. Good afternoon. I will be brief. The state submits that Mr. Mullis has not met his burden of proof on any of his claims. We ask the court to deny his application in its entirety. In addition to the record and issues that have already been developed at trial and before it in this proceeding, we will address our legal reasoning for why each of his claims fail in our written brief. Thank you.
Counsel.
No burden there, so.
Your final rebuttal.
I just want to add one more thing, which is that although we believe that we've established Mr. Mullis's actual innocence, which means that there should not be any new trial, if the state concludes that they want to rely on Dr. Cruz and retry him, that's an opportunity that he should have an opportunity to present this evidence to the jury. Because the last thing I'll say about this is the court may conclude in looking at all of the evidence, both what it heard here, what it reads in the record, and it may determine, well, I see some evidence on the other side. You know, I see some evidence still that for me, I don't know what to make of that. I see that the state made some arguments at the original trial, and for me, I don't know where I end up on actual innocence. The court can have questions as a result of this hearing about what happened, but as the court knows, those questions are the province of the jury. It is for the jury to decide if it believes Mr. Mullis. It's for the jury to decide if it believes this other evidence. But this is all evidence that the jury should hear. Because Mr. Mullis is established, there is at least a reasonable likelihood that the outcome of this trial would have been different. With the overwhelming evidence that the court has seen, that it has read and will read, that it's heard, this is evidence of an innocent man. This is evidence of a man that deserves a new trial and a trial where he can have his day in court. And for that reason, Your Honor, we're asking the court to grant Mr. Mullis a new trial, and we'll provide additional legal briefing in the post-trial briefing that we make in a month, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel.
Wow.
I will await both parties' final briefing by the April date that we previously discussed. At that point, I will consider the matter finally submitted. Counsel, if you maybe just want to touch base with me briefly in chambers before you leave so that we can make sure that everybody is on the same page as far as the exhibits that were admitted. And then I'll give you a day or two just to review any final security level issues before I file the exhibit management order. Other than that, anything that we need to address before we go off the record? Anything on behalf of the applicant?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Anything on behalf of the state?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you all for appearing and for your cooperation to keep things moving throughout the trial these past days. Thank you.
That was amazing. I didn't realize they were going for both actual innocence and Sixth Amendment on this PCR. Actual innocence means we're asking for the judge to throw out the conviction and release him, basically overturn the conviction. Where Sixth Amendment is a fair trial, which is I would say it's a lower ask. Okay? It's easier to ask for a fair trial than it is to say overturn the verdict of 12 jurors who sat through trial and reached a verdict. That's a big ask to overturn a verdict. But it was in there. They said we think we've established it as well, but I don't think they even in their own admission, they're like, even though we think we've done it, we're just asking for the new trial. That's going to be the lower bar. And this is different from what he appealed. So yes, he did have an appeal before, but his appeal before was not based on ineffective assistance of counsel, where he had a bad lawyer who did him dirty the day of trial. This is not something he could change. I mean, the jury's sitting there, and the lawyer, totally to his surprise, gets up and says, "It was murder." And Todd just about falls out of his chair. He writes a note and says, WTF to his lawyer. Where did that come from? That's not what we were talking about. We've been talking about an accident all this time. So I think they made a strong argument for a new case, but we'll see what happens. No matter how it ends, it won't bring Amy back, full stop. That is the truth. If he gets a new trial, he will lose again. And I'm okay with that. I really am. But case law with Supreme Court, those are some pretty good citations that they threw in there right at the beginning with cases that were similar to that and how they matched up and saying, yeah, the Supreme Court has held that that's a Sixth Amendment violation if that's the case. And they pretty much had that in spades. So WTF, where's that from? That's what I was thinking. Yeah. Don't think he'll get a new trial, but I respect the decision. Let's see. Do we want to go back and see the rest of his cross-examination? Let's see. We watched his direct. I know. We didn't get to watch his cross, so give me just 1 second. Hang on, Lowe's is calling. Hello. Hello.
Hello, good afternoon. This is Christina. We sent you a letter about the updated Medicare benefits in your state. Have you checked your upgraded 2025 benefits?
Hello, can I talk to a real person?
Well, my name is Christina. Sorry for the confusion. I am calling you about the letter we sent you last week regarding the improved Medicare benefits that include dental, vision, and hearing with cash back of up to $200. I believe you have both Part A and B of Medicare, right?
I'm going to give you one more chance to transfer me to a real person. Otherwise, I'm hanging up.
I think we should discuss this some other time. Have a good day.
That was a bot. It was terrible. All right, let me see if I can get this. Need to find. Todd Mullis testimony. Looking for the video we already watched half of. I think this is it. Let's see. I think Court TV had a good version of this. Court TV, Todd Mullis trial. Todd Mullis takes the stand. Oh, found it. Here we go. We're good. We're going to pick up right where we left off.
To the jury room, and I'll let the court attendant know what time we need you in the morning. Remember the admonition. Keep an open mind about everything, and you will report to the jury room as always.
All rise for the jury.
You took an oath yesterday. Do you understand that you're still under oath?
Yes, I do.
Okay, very good. Cross-examination.
Excuse me.
Here's the cross-examination from the original trial.
You bought your farm in 1999, correct?
My first farm, yes.
And that was before you met Amy?
Yes, it was.
And when you say your first farm, how many farms do you currently have?
I own
3, and I own part of another one.
And then your dad is a farmer.
Yes, he is.
And your dad's farm is right next to yours. Is that correct?
No.
How far is your dad's farm from yours?
My dad's farm is 2.5, 3 miles.
And your brother, Pat Mullis, is a farmer?
Yes, he is.
And where is his farm in relation to yours?
Northeast.
How far?
4 to 5 miles.
And then Mike Mullis, your brother that we heard from yesterday, also has a farm.
Yes.
I'm going to put this on 1.25
where is his farm
speed.
in relation to yours?
They're all within 3 miles.
I think yesterday he said about 2 miles or so.
It depends which farm you're talking about.
And even though you have your farm and your dad and your brothers have their farm, you kind of all farm together.
Yes.
Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
And over the years, you've continued to purchase land.
Yes.
And you've worked on your business, obviously.
Yes.
And this is your livelihood.
Yes.
And it means a lot to you, correct?
Yes.
And you spend a lot of time farming.
Yes.
And you didn't initially have the hog barns, correct?
I had older ones.
And then you got new hog barns, would that be fair to say?
Yes.
And when was that?
The first one was in 2012.
And then when did you, so I know you have 2 hog barns currently, correct?
Where I live, yes.
And when did you get that second one?
In 2014.
And then the hog barn business, is this, do you, Pat, Mike, and your dad, are you all part of that?
The 2 at where I live?
Yes.
I own them. And
Does Mike also have a hog barn?
yes.
And does your dad and Pat also have hog barns?
Pat does not.
And you've continued to purchase more land, like you said, correct?
Yes.
And you love being a farmer.
Yes.
And in fact, when you've talked about before about how your dad is so proud of you and your brothers for being farmers.
I've heard him say he's proud of it, yeah.
And Tristan was really getting into farming with you, correct?
Yes.
In the last couple of months before Amy's death.
His whole life.
And specifically, though, wasn't he taking more of an interest in the last couple of months? Helping out a little bit more?
I would say in the last couple of years he's helped out more.
And he would help out on the weekends?
Yes.
And after school?
Yes.
And the only people that worked on your farm were you, Tristan, and Amy, correct?
No, the younger 2 helped too.
Taylor and Wyatt.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Taylor and Wyatt at times helped.
Yes, they did.
And I know that sometimes you would help your brothers or they would help you.
Yes.
But you didn't have any hired workers.
No.
And your farm is your legacy, correct? It's what you want to pass on to your children.
If they want to farm.
And, well, you talked to Agent Turbot and you talked about how Tristan told you he wants to be a farmer someday.
Yes.
And how you're so excited that he wants to be a farmer. Right?
I told him if he wants to be a farmer, then I would help him farm.
And you would pass on your farm to Tristan or any of your kids if they wanted to farm.
Yes.
And when you and Amy married, was it 2004?
Yes.
And Amy is part of your family trust, correct?
Yes, she is.
And your whole family is part of that, is that correct? I'm sorry, your parents are part of that?
No.
Okay, so I'm sorry, so your trust, it's just you and Amy, is that right?
Yes.
Now, you have a Gleamer combine, correct?
Yes.
And you have tractors?
Yes.
And I know you told us yesterday you like to hunt?
Yes.
And you like to do all kinds of hunting and fishing. I think you indicated you like to go to the creek or crick, is that right?
Yes, with the kids, yes.
And back when this happened in November 2018, you had a flip phone, correct?
Yes.
And you couldn't access the internet from your flip phone?
No.
And Amy had a smartphone.
Yes.
Where she could access the internet.
Yes.
And I believe Tristan also had a phone, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
And Taylor and Wyatt, did they have phones at that time?
Taylor had a phone.
And were they track phones?
I think Taylor's was.
And Tristan's was also a type of track phone where you had to buy minutes or something?
Yeah, I think you had to buy a card.
Now, we talked a lot about the first affair that Amy had. You remember talking about that yesterday?
Yes.
And at the time that Amy had this affair, she was working at the hospital.
Yes.
And you indicated that after this affair, it was Amy's decision to stop working.
Yes.
She wanted to be a stay-at-home mom.
Yes.
And she just wanted to be there for the kids.
She wanted to be there for the kids and us.
And you. And all the kids were full-time in school at that time, correct?
No.
Who was not?
Wyatt.
How old is Wyatt now?
He now is 9.
Okay, so when he was 5, he wasn't in school?
He was 3.
And was he in preschool or any type of schooling?
Not at that time.
When did he start going to school?
I think he went when he was 4. I think he went to pre.
You talked yesterday. Amy loved to go shopping. She loved to go out. She loved to be social.
Yes.
She loved to go out to lunch.
Yes.
She loved to golf.
Yes.
And you encouraged all of these things, you said.
Yes.
You wanted her to get out there and do these things.
If it made her happy, yes.
And it was, you indicated yesterday, it was Amy's decision to leave the hospital.
Yes, she has to.
And you know Amy met the person that she had the affair with at the hospital, correct?
I don't know if they met at the hospital or not.
Okay, so you and Amy were so open about your relationship, right? After this happened.
Yes.
So you told us yesterday, you told Detective Turbot on November 16th, 2018, that after you guys reconciled, it was picture perfect, essentially, right?
Yes.
It was a great relationship.
Yes.
You used the words over and over how open it was.
Yes.
And you never talked to Amy about how she met this person that she had an affair with.
She either met at the hospital or at a boating event that was organized together with people at the hospital. So,
Okay, so somehow she met him through the hospital.
Yes.
So now you do remember that.
Yes.
Now, let's talk about November 10th, 2018. That morning, you said that you just wanted to do some chores around the house, which was normal, right?
Can you ask that
I'm
again?
sorry, on November 10th, 2018, the day of Amy's murder, in that morning, you got up to do chores.
Yes.
And you were with Tristan.
Yes.
And you and Tristan went, I think you said off-site.
Yes.
And you came back.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Is that a yes? And when you came back, Amy was doing a puzzle.
Yes.
Amy, at that point, seemed fine.
Yes.
And in fact, Amy had plans later in the day to go shopping, correct?
Yes, she did.
She was going to go with Taylor and buy some snow boots.
Yes.
And then Amy, you said it was Amy's decision to come outside.
She asked to come out and if we needed help.
She wanted to help. And you and Tristan went out first.
Yes.
And you guys started working around the barn.
Yes.
You were doing some things. Is that yes?
Yes.
Tristan was, bringing heaters, correct?
Yes.
And then Amy started helping as well.
Yes.
And you indicated that Amy got dizzy.
Yes.
And Tristan saw it.
Yes.
And then you saw it too.
Yes.
And at that point, you were really worried about her.
I was concerned at that time. Yes.
Right. Obviously, this is your wife. You care about her.
Yes.
You didn't want anything to happen to her.
No.
And you knew that she had this procedure 4 days ago.
Yes.
And at that point, after the first time, you didn't tell her to go inside.
I asked if she was okay.
And she said yes.
Yes.
And she wanted to stay out there.
Yes.
So she again started working.
Yes.
And at that time, she gets dizzy again.
Yes.
And I'm sure at this point, you're extremely concerned about her.
Yes, I was concerned. I don't know if I was extremely concerned. I just asked if she was okay.
Well, you were so concerned, you told her to stop working.
I asked if she needed to go to the house.
And she said yes?
She said no.
So then that's when you said, you know what, I just want you to stop, but first, let's go get that pet carrier.
It was after 3 or 4 times of asking her.
Okay, so just so that we're clear, at least twice, you
Yes.
know she's dizzy.
Yes.
And probably you just said 3 or 4 times you asked her to go in the house.
I asked if she was okay and to go to the house.
Okay. And
If,
Amy
if she needed to.
If she needed
if she could continue.
And she kept insisting she just wanted to be out there and working.
Yes.
And then at that point, you say, well, actually, yesterday you said, Tristan said, hey, you know what, Mom? If you can help us, or you can help us go get that pet carrier.
Yes.
So Tristan sends Amy to get the pet carrier.
He didn't send her. He asked. Hey,
I'm sorry. It was his idea.
a conversation
It was
between
his
all
idea.
of us.
I'm sorry?
It was a conversation between all of us.
Oh, between all of you. So who asked Amy to go get the pet carrier?
Who asked Amy? It was both of us, really.
Okay. Yesterday you testified, right?
Yes.
And yesterday when you testified, you said Tristan asked Amy to go get the pet carrier. You recall that, right?
He asked her first, and then I asked her
Okay.
second.
So first Tristan asked her, then you asked her.
Yes.
And the pet carrier is pretty big, right?
What's big, I guess.
Well, okay, you heard Tristan's testimony, correct?
Yes.
And when Tristan said that he probably estimated it was 15 or 20 pounds.
He said it was 15 pounds.
Okay, would you agree with that?
I would say it's 10 to 15 pounds, yes.
Sorry, just one moment.
We are replaying the original interview, or the original interrogation, cross-examination of Todd Mullis from his first trial where he was convicted. He did take the stand in his own defense. This is cross-examination. Previously,
Todd,
we've
I'm showing
watched
you
the
a
direct.
State's Exhibit 16 that's been admitted to evidence. This is the pet carrier, correct?
Yes, it is.
And that's where that was where it was located in the red shed.
Yes.
And you saw a lot of pictures yesterday and the day before about the red shed, from the red shed.
Yes.
And those were true and accurate depictions of the way that the red shed appeared on the day of Amy's murder.
Yes.
And when you walk into the red shed, it's a pretty narrow space, correct?
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, when you walk in, you turn to the left, and that's where Amy's body was found.
Yes.
So you walk in, and you saw pictures yesterday. You couldn't get the door open, right? Because it was frozen shut.
Yes.
So you walk in, and if you go straight to the left, there's a very narrow pathway.
Yes.
And that's where Amy's body is found.
Yes.
And she's found on her hands and knees,
Yes.
and she's found with a corn rake sticking out of her back.
Yes.
And then if you go past where Amy's body was found, you turn right. Is that correct?
Yes.
And there's almost like with the crates in there, it almost is almost like a path. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
And you turn right, and if you look in this photo, Exhibit 16, you kind of see once you turn right that little passageway. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
And there's an auger there. You see that at the bottom of this photo.
Yes.
And once you make that right turn and you're looking down into the red shed, what's on your right-hand side?
As soon as you turn?
Yes.
I think there was chemical totes.
And what's on the left side?
There was some jugs and junk there at first, and then there was some saddle tanks.
And then, so where is this pet carrier from once you turn right after you found Amy's body? Is it on the right side or the left side?
After you turn, it'd be on the left.
Okay, so this picture here would be looking down, and this pet carrier would be on the left. I think you just said that. Does that make sense?
If I would be on the other side, looking
Okay.
this way.
And this also isn't, you indicated that there's items on both sides, right?
Yes.
And it's also, it's not a huge passageway or a huge area, is it?
It depends where you're at.
Okay, so where the pet carrier is, how wide is it?
Between the pet carrier and the wagon, probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 feet.
Okay, and this is where the pet carrier was that day, correct?
Yes.
And this is the photograph, you know, that the police took this photograph after Amy's murder.
Yes.
And this is the specific pet carrier that you and Tristan together asked Amy to go and get.
Yes.
And you know that she had that procedure 4 days prior, correct?
Yes.
And you actually took her to that procedure.
Yes, I did.
And you brought her home from it.
Yes.
And you actually signed your name on her discharge papers, correct? Because she was being discharged to you.
Yes.
And it said on there that she's not to carry anything over 10 pounds, correct?
She was recommended not to carry anything over 10 pounds.
But you felt at that point she was fine to go and get the pet carrier, right? Meaning she could carry something over 10 pounds. You thought she could handle it.
She said yes.
And you thought she could just take it and, you know, bring it out of that passageway and into that narrow area.
I hadn't been over there for a couple months.
But you knew where it was.
Yes.
And this is your property.
Yes.
This is your shed.
Yes.
You've owned this shed for how long?
As long as I've been there.
So since 1999 when you bought this property.
Yes.
And it sounds like you care a lot you spend a lot of time on your farm, so you know where stuff is on your property.
Yes.
Now, it's at that point, or I'm sorry, you see Amy leave, and you and Tristan are in the barn, the hog barn. Is that right?
Yeah.
And you don't see Amy for how long?
And as long as it took to finish, about an hour.
Okay, so during that time, or I'm sorry, after that time, you said that you realized that the pet carrier wasn't by the shop.
Yes.
And who's the one that says, oh man, the pet carrier's not there, you or Tristan?
I think I commented that it wasn't over there, and then Tristan said it isn't.
And then whose decision was it? I believe yesterday you said that Tristan said, I'll go check.
He asked, do you think I should go check and see what's going on?
Okay, so he didn't go to check on Amy in the house, right?
No.
Because your assumption would be that if it's an hour's time that Amy would be in the house, right?
Yes.
That she would have gotten that pet carrier or couldn't get it and went back in the house.
Yes.
But it was Tristan's idea to go and look for Amy.
We had told her that if she couldn't get it, it would be fine, then go in the house.
Okay, so you told her it was fine. Did you tell the police that when you talked to them after this happened?
No.
So then at that point, you're taking off your boots, right?
Yes.
And Tristan goes to the red shed.
Yes.
And you hear Tristan scream for you.
He yelled, yes.
Yelled, I'm sorry. And you run over there.
After he yelled the second time, yes.
And you run over there and you go into that red shed and you see your wife on the ground.
Yes.
And just explain to us the position you saw Amy in.
She was more or less hunched up in kind of I guess you'd call it a fetal position.
Was she on her knees?
Yes.
And were her hands down like you just indicated? Kind of, the palms are down, if you remember.
I don't know if I remember how her hands were sitting.
Okay.
She was hunched up with her jacket hunched up.
And I think you told, okay. And you see this corn rake sticking out of her.
Yes.
You have your phone on you.
Yes.
You don't call 911 right away.
No.
You immediately try to pick her up.
No. I looked and I turned her face towards me to see if she was breathing or alive. And I was asking her name, Amy.
Then she's not responsive at all.
No.
And that rake is still sticking out of her.
Yes.
Now, just give me 1 second.
Thomas, congrats on 25 months. Welcome.
Todd, I'm showing you State's Exhibit 21. Is this the area that you actually saw Amy?
Yes.
So there's like a rag, it looks like a blue or gray rag on the bottom there. Do you see that?
Yes.
In relation to that rag, where do you see Amy's body?
It was actually where the doors come together, where the white-looking rag was.
Oh, I'm sorry. So past that blue rag, you see the white rag on the floor. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then to the left of that, it does look, there's like almost like an opening between the doors.
Yes.
And that's where you saw Amy's body.
She was right on where the doors come together.
Where's her head?
Her head is down right on the edge of where the edge of the concrete.
And which way is her head facing?
Which way is her head facing?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
More or less straight down or slightly out.
Is it facing towards where you enter the barn or away from where you enter the barn? Or the red shed, I apologize.
Her head was towards the opening where you go in.
And the rake is impaled in her back?
Yes.
And it's sticking out?
Yes.
And it has a handle, but it's a broken handle?
Yes.
So where's the handle of the rake? Which direction is it going? Is it going towards those crates, or is it going towards the door, or where is it at?
Towards the crates.
So at that point, you lift up Amy's head, and that's when she's not responsive.
She's not responsive.
And Tristan is right there.
Yes.
Your 13-year-old son.
Yes.
And Tristan is about to pass out, correct?
Not at that time. I was aware. I didn't look at him.
Okay. Well, when you're interviewed by John Turbot on November 16th, 2018, you do tell him that at this point, you look at Tristan and you think Tristan's about to pass out.
I thought he was about to pass out after I was carrying her out.
Okay. So it wasn't until that time you realized that.
Yes.
And so Tristan's standing right by you.
He's behind me.
Yeah, behind you. You then decide to lift Amy up.
I pulled her away from the door.
And so how did you pull her? Did you pull her towards you?
No. She was leaning up against the door, right where the doors come together. I had my hand on her face and I reached over to her right side. I pulled her away from the door slightly to see if I could get her up.
And you weren't able to get her up?
The handle, when I pulled her over, contacted the chemical tote.
So then at that point, you decide to take out the rake?
Yes.
And I think you indicated you had to kind of manipulate it, pull it out.
Not really.
Not really?
No.
So it was pretty easy, it just popped right out.
It seemed to pull right out.
Even, it's on a curve, right? You didn't have to do anything but just pull it right out.
It pulled straight out.
And then I think you just threw it, right? You just threw it.
I had it in one hand, I had her in the other.
So you're holding the corn rake, then what do?
I threw the corn rake, and then I got under her armpits to lift her up.
You actually pick her up by her armpits.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
And where does her body then make contact with your body?
In my chest.
So you're holding her, where's her face?
Right in this area, right in my chest.
And is it almost like you're bear hugging her and holding her at the same time? Is that fair to say?
In a way, yes.
And at that point, you don't yell to Tristan to call 911?
No.
You don't call 911?
I don't know if he had his phone.
But you had your phone?
Yes.
And then, is that when you tell Tristan to go get the truck?
Yes.
And where's the truck located?
I don't remember exactly where it was. I told him to go get it.
Okay. And so while Tristan's doing that, what are you doing?
I'm in the process of getting her out of the shed.
You're getting her out of the shed. Does Tristan pull up the truck?
Yes.
And he pulls it right up to like the door of the red shed?
No.
Where does he pull it?
He pulls it. There's a U-shaped driveway, and then there's a small driveway that was behind, that connects the red shed to the other driveway. It's hard to explain.
So how far would you say from the red shed he pulls up?
I say 30 feet, 40 feet.
So you're carrying Amy for how long would you say?
It took a lot of manipulation to get her out, and then I picked her up, and I was carrying her like this in both arms. So you're asking time?
Do you know how long? A minute, 2 minutes?
Maybe a minute, I'm estimating that.
So then Tristan pulls up the truck and he gets in the front passenger seat.
He comes out, that's when he was shook up.
Okay, that's when you think you thought maybe he might pass out.
Yes, he just saw me carrying her,
And
I told him to open the door up.
This is very traumatic for both of you.
Yes.
I mean, so he gets in the front seat,
Yes.
in the passenger seat.
Yes.
And it's at that point that you put your wife on top of your 13-year-old son. You lay her
Yes.
body on top of his.
Yes.
Okay. Nobody's in the back seat. I know it's a truck. Nobody's back there.
There was nobody else.
And Amy's bleeding, correct?
I didn't see her bleeding.
Okay. You pulled that corn rake out.
Yes.
And you said yesterday you're a doer, right? You're a doer. That's why you didn't call 911. That's why you pulled that rake out.
Yes.
That's what. And you, I mean, being a farmer, I'm sure that there's always things that happen, right? You are always having to, you're handy. You're always trying to, I'm sure the kids are getting injured on the farm doing stuff, right? You're a good dad. You have to make sure that you're there for them and helping them.
Yes.
And you know, have you ever heard that you should never pull something out of someone when they have something in them, a knife or a fork or anything like that?
I never heard that.
You've never heard that?
No.
You've never seen that? I know you said yesterday that you love to watch all these shows and you guys like to watch all these things about ancient tribes and all that stuff. You've never, in anything that you've ever watched, ever heard that if somebody's impaled with something, you shouldn't pull it out of them?
I didn't recall it at the time.
So you may have heard it, you just weren't thinking about it then.
I wasn't thinking about it that time.
And so you didn't see Amy bleeding at that point?
No.
So you lay Amy on top of Tristan and then you run to the front driver's seat.
Yes.
And you start driving.
Yes.
And your goal at that point is to get Amy to the hospital.
Yes.
That's all you're focused on.
Yes.
And you want to make sure she's okay.
Try and get her help, yes.
What hospital were you driving to?
I was going to try to go to Manchester.
And how far is that from your house?
15 minutes.
You said yesterday after you pull out of the driveway, that's when you think, oh, now I'm going to call 911.
Yes.
And you pull your phone out of your pocket.
Yes.
You call 911.
Yes.
Now, let's talk a little bit about this corn rake. You saw it, I know you saw it in court here and you've seen it before because it's your corn rake, correct?
It was on the farm when I bought it, yes.
And so you've had it since 1999?
No.
Oh, you just said it was on the farm when I bought it.
It was on the farm across the road when I bought it.
Okay. So do you know what year that was?
2012.
So you've had that rake since 2012. Do you know how the handle got broken?
No.
And is that corn rake always left in the red shed?
No.
Where is it usually at?
It was in the barn across the road. It was in the shop.
Before the time that you see it sticking out of your wife's back, when was the last time you saw it before that?
Wow. Quite
The
descriptive.
last time I saw it, I think, was on the grass.
And when would that have been?
I'd say earlier in October.
Okay,
I was
so
filling up the combine with fuel.
Within a month before Amy's death.
Yes.
So you don't know where it was. You yourself didn't know it was in the red shed.
I think I did.
You did on November 10th. You knew it was in on November 10th. You knew it was in the red shed.
If I had to think back, yes.
So I thought you just said a minute ago that the last time you saw it was on the grass somewhere.
It was on the grass, and then I had to move it, and I put it in the red shed to get it off the grass.
Okay, I'm sorry. So sometime in October, you saw it on the grass.
Yes.
And you moved it inside the red shed.
I set it inside the door.
And when you set it inside the door, we've talked about when you walk in, did you set it on the right-hand side or the left-hand side?
I don't remember, but it was probably the right.
And you just set it there.
I put it inside the door.
Didn't hang it up or put it in a certain area or on top of anything.
I don't remember.
Now, are there any other type of rakes in that red shed?
Not that I can recall.
What else is in, I know we talked a little bit about it. In that red shed, there's the augers and there's a lot of crates and stuff like that. Is there anything else that's in there?
There's the sweep augers there that you see. There's a wagon with fertilizer tanks on it.
And when you say a wagon, what do you mean by wagon? Just to explain.
It's an old hay rack with the top cut off, and it's got fertilizer tanks on it.
Now, while you and Tristan were in the hog barn, you're working and Tristan's working, right?
Yes.
And the hog barn is about the size of a football field.
Yes.
And Tristan's 13. He knows what he's doing, right? He knows how to help you farm.
Yes.
And you're doing stuff and he's doing stuff.
Yes.
And you're not listening to any music.
No.
And it's just a November morning when you guys are working in there just like any other day.
Yes.
You don't hear anybody outside after Amy leaves the hog barn.
I did not hear anybody outside.
You didn't hear any trucks pull up or cars?
The only thing I heard was maybe a few semis going down the road.
Because the road is pretty close, right off. When you turn into your farm, the road is, you obviously turn off the road, correct?
Yes.
And you kind of have I know we looked at the picture yesterday, you kind of have like not a full circle driveway, but it kind of goes in a half circle. Would that be fair to say? Kind of?
Sure, yes.
And that's the road onto your farm.
Yes.
So you can hear some semis going by.
Sometimes.
And do you remember that day if you actually heard semis?
I wasn't paying attention.
And you didn't hear, though, anybody drive onto your driveway or drive onto your property?
I did not hear.
You did not hear anybody walking outside?
I don't know how I could.
You didn't see anybody, right?
How could I?
Well, there's some windows out of the office, right?
I wasn't in the office.
Okay, so at no point you went to the office?
No.
And you don't hear... How far is the red shed from the hog barn that you were in?
Depends where you're at in the hog building.
Okay, so tell me, can you approximate?
From the very southwest corner of the north hog barn to maybe the northeast corner of the red shed, I would estimate it at 150 feet.
Okay, so that's from the furthest, so if you go the furthest corner away from the red shed, that's 150, is that right? Okay, so I'm sorry.
The closest points,
The closest point you said is 150 feet?
I would say.
And the farthest point is what? If you had to guess. I mean, it would be 150 feet plus a football field.
Yes.
And at no point do you
450
hear
feet.
Amy screaming.
No.
You don't hear any signs of any struggle.
No.
You hear nothing.
No.
Just you and Tristan working.
What we're doing, yes.
Now, after this happens, you go to the hospital, correct?
Yes.
And at the hospital, family starts showing up.
Yes.
Your parents show up.
Those family and friends show up, yes.
Okay, so your parents, your sister Lynn shows up, correct?
Yes.
Bob and Eileen, Amy's dad and stepmom, show up.
Yes.
Eventually, Peg and Randy show up. They're coming from a little bit further.
Yes.
And then there's also, I think there's some more family too showing up.
Yeah, Jeff showed up and
There's friends, like you said, some friends are showing up.
yes.
Amy works at the hospital. Some people are stopping by that she used to work with.
Yes.
And everyone keeps asking you what happened.
Not everyone.
Well, you remember talking to Bob and Eileen about what happened, right?
He asked what happened, yes.
And you told him, I don't know, she fell on a corn rake.
I said, I really don't know, Bob, what happened.
Okay, you never said she fell on a corn rake?
I don't recall the conversation.
You said it in the 911 call that we listened to, right?
Yes, I did.
You said she fell on a corn rake, right?
Yes.
You also said I sent my son to go find her, right?
Yes.
Now, that same day, you're at the hospital, and Deputy Thompson asks to talk to you for a little bit.
Yes.
Remember that? And there's a video of that, right?
I've never seen it.
You've never seen it. But you remember talking to him.
I remember talking to him twice.
And it's shortly after Amy is pronounced dead.
Yes, I think so. I
don't know the exact
I don't know the exact
Okay.
time before or after.
And he just wants to talk to you about what happened.
Yes.
And you start telling him about your day.
Yes.
And you tell him about how Amy was dizzy.
Yes.
And how you sent her in to get the pet carrier, everything that you said today, right?
Whatever I said at the time, yes.
And you insist several times, you keep telling him that Amy was dizzy that day. Do you recall
Yes.
that? And that he asks you, Deputy Thompson asks you, were you with Tristan the whole time? And you say, yep, we were together the whole time. You remember that?
Yes.
And at that time, you do say a couple times, I don't know, I want to know what happened. You say that, right? Do you remember saying that?
Yes, I do.
And you say, man, I want to go back to the farm and see for myself. How did this happen? You say that, right?
That was at the sheriff's office, yes.
Well, you also say it to Deputy Thompson, don't you? Initially at the hospital?
I don't remember. I was asked multiple times by...
And at that time, you don't say anything about, wait, I have cameras. Let's go see if we can catch something on camera. You don't say that to Deputy Thompson, do you?
No.
Because at that point, you don't know that they're not working, right?
No, I did not.
Because according to you, those cats probably just did it. That's what you think.
Afterwards, yeah.
So then a little bit later, you talk to Sheriff LeClaire. You recall that the same day?
Yes.
And with Sheriff LeClaire, Luke Thompson is also there from the deputy, or Deputy Luke Thompson is also there.
Yes.
And when you're talking to them, again, you keep talking about how Amy was dizzy that day. Because you're telling what happened.
Yes.
And you're asked if anybody else was on the farm or if you heard anybody, and you said no because you didn't, right?
Yes.
And you again say that you were with Tristan the whole time.
Yes.
And this, do you, if you remember, I know it was a really difficult day for you, but do you remember how much time from the interview with Deputy Thompson till the interview with LeClaire and Thompson?
Well, I remember Luke asking me 2 different times at the hospital.
Okay, that's right. I'm sorry. You talked to him twice.
And then he asked me if I could go downtown.
So would it be within a few hours, would you say?
Yeah, it was within, I would say, an hour.
So then you actually go to the Delaware County Sheriff's Office.
Yes.
And during that interview, you never say, oh, wait, I have cameras. Let's go check them.
I never said.
And obviously your mind's racing and you're trying to figure out what happened, right?
Yes.
But you never think about that. At that time, I'm sorry.
At that time, because it was inside the shed.
And, well, but you said yesterday that the next day, then you thought of it, right? You thought, oh, I'm going to go check those cameras. Right?
Yes.
And you went to go check them because your wife just had a horrible accident and died.
Yes.
So you thought of it the next day.
Yes.
Even though there wasn't a camera in the red shed.
When I talked to family, when I got home.
Oh, they reminded you.
They said, I wonder if something would be on the cameras that would show maybe some sign of anything.
And that's when you go into the shop and you see, oh, they haven't recorded. Right?
I see the antennas on the ground, everything was off, or not on the screen.
But then you make sure you kind of get them working again.
Yeah, I got them up on the window, so.
Now, obviously, this is a very traumatic time for you. You guys have Amy's services and you're grieving with everything, right?
Yes.
And several days go by and you still think this is an accident.
Yes.
Because you can't think of another explanation.
Yes.
And on November 16th, 2018, you still think it's an accident when you go to the police station and talk to Agent John Turbett.
Yes.
And you still thought it was an accident, even though you found her on her hands and knees, face down, correct?
Yes.
Even though a corn rake was sticking out of her back.
Yes.
You're still just thinking, I can't believe that this happened. I can't believe she fell on a corn rake. That's what you're thinking.
I had no idea what happened.
So on November 16th, 2018, you speak with John Turbett. Initially, Sheriff LeClaire is in there, right?
Yes.
And then it's just you and John.
Yes.
And you're talking about what happened.
Yes.
And that whole first part, you guys are just talking about your life, your farm, Tristan, your kids, how you're such a great dad, everything like that, right?
Yes.
And at the beginning of that interview, Agent Turbett asks you how things are going, how's your marriage? And initially you say great, right? Because they were.
Yeah.
And then after a while, he says to you, all right, let's talk a little bit more about your marriage. Tell me the good and the bad. Is there any bad? And you tell him about that first affair.
Yes.
And you tell him that you found out about it and that, you guys reconciled.
Yes.
And you tell him since then things have been great, right?
For the most part, yes.
You tell him that you guys were able to work through that, go to a little bit of counseling, and move forward.
Yes.
And that was when Amy quit working at the hospital, and you said because your family was really important to you, you wanted to just keep going, right?
Yes.
So then Agent Turbett asks you, since that affair, the last 5 years, how have things been going? And you keep telling him, great, they're great, right?
I don't remember what I said, but yeah.
Well,
yes.
You watched the clip yesterday,
Yes.
right? The first clip started with him asking you, how have the last 5 years been? And you say, great, we're so open, it's been awesome, right? Because it has been.
Yes.
And he says to you, anything else, anything you need to, any problems, anything, and you say no. Right?
When we resolve our problems?
Right. He says, in the last 5 years, anything you want to tell me, you say no.
Yes.
And it's at that point that Agent Turbot brings up Jerry Frazier and he just says to you, hey, do you have a Jerry Frazier that works on your farm? And you say, yeah.
Yeah.
Because he does, right? He would come, he would help with the hogs and everything.
Yes.
And Agent Turbot goes on to ask you, how's your relationship with him? You say fine, because it is. You told us that, right?
Yes.
And then he asks you about Amy and Amy and Jerry's relationship. And you say, good, it's business, nothing to cause me any concern.
Yes.
And he even he asks you at the end of that conversation before he walks out of the room, anything else I need to know about Jerry Frazier? And you say no, right?
Yes.
Which was not the truth, right? Because you didn't tell him at that point about the fact that you confronted Amy and Jerry about the affair. You didn't bring it.
I didn't bring it up that
You didn't bring it up then. He leaves the room, right? Agent
Yes.
Turbot, sorry. And about 3 minutes later, he comes in, gives you some water.
Yes.
It's at that point that you do, as soon as he walks in, you say, you know what? I want to tell you something. There was something with Jerry and Amy, right?
Yes.
And that's when then you tell him that, initially you say that, I was a little bit uncomfortable, but it wasn't a big deal. But then I told them, keep it professional, right?
Yes.
And that's what happened.
Yes.
You just wanted them to keep it professional.
Yes.
Now, you and John then go on to talk about this, and you say you put that past you, right?
Yes.
And that's what you told us yesterday. You put this all past you.
Yes.
There's some rumors that come out in August, but you weren't concerned about them, right?
Not after Amy and I talked, no.
Right, because you felt confident that Amy wasn't doing anything.
Yes.
Now, back to this interview on November 16th. Up until that point, for 6 days, you're dealing with Amy's death, right?
Yes.
And you're taking care of the kids,
Yes.
and you're arranging pretty much everything for her services, and just obviously I know your family's helping you, is that right?
Yes.
And obviously, this is a tough time for you.
Yes.
And you're really upset. Are you upset? Would it be fair to say you're upset, obviously?
Yes.
And, I mean, at that point, you told me you still think it's an accident because you had no other explanation.
Yes.
So Agent Turbot tells you that this is a homicide, correct?
At some point, yes.
You never even thought about it being a homicide at that point.
I got to remember how he said it, but
Well, at some point he tells you, we think you're responsible for
Yes.
Amy's murder. At some
Yes.
point he says, you killed Amy.
yes.
And he does tell you that at some point the medical examiners have ruled it a homicide, right?
Yes, at some point.
And that was not out in the news yet. That report was not released yet. So that's the first time you're hearing it.
Yes.
And you didn't really respond. Would you agree with that?
I didn't know what to think.
Right. But Agent Turbot just told you that somebody came onto your property and killed your wife, and you didn't respond.
I was dumbfounded.
Right. Like, you couldn't even believe it, right?
Yes.
Because at this point, for 6 days, you're thinking it's an accident, and now somebody tells you that somebody came on and killed Amy when you were yards away, right?
Yes.
Your wife. Amy was your wife, right?
Yes.
Somebody that you swore to love and protect, right?
Yes.
And you feel, this is somebody you care about. You have children with her, obviously, right?
Yes.
And somebody came onto your property right under your nose and killed her, right? That's what you're told.
That's what I'm told.
And you know that's true now because you heard all the testimony in this case, right?
Yes.
You know that somebody took that corn rake and stabbed Amy in the back 2 or 3 times.
Yes.
You now know this wasn't an accident.
Yes.
Later that same day, John Turbot is at your house with the other agents and officers, and they're executing search warrants, right?
Yes.
And he asks you to take him around again to kind of show him, to go through your story or what happened, right?
He has to see buildings, yes.
And again, he says to you, Todd, this was a homicide, and you don't respond at all. Do you?
No.
You're still in shock. Would that be fair to say?
I was in shock and I didn't, yeah.
And he even says the word to you, we want justice for Amy. Do you remember him saying that to you? Oh, you don't remember that. And you at no point through that conversation that day when they're executing the search warrants say anything about any suspects? Or, I'm sorry, give them any ideas of who might come onto your property and kill Amy.
I don't remember them asking me that. No, they wanted to blame me.
At no point did you, during your interview with John Turbett, did you tell him anybody that you think would maybe want to kill Amy?
No.
And as you sit here today, you don't know who would possibly want to do this to Amy.
No.
And yesterday, I think you said Amy was social. She was all over the place. She had a lot of friends, right?
I wouldn't say she has a lot of friends.
Okay, so she has friends that she
has
does
friends.
things with. But you had no, you still, as you sit here today, can't think of any person that would want to do this to your wife.
No.
Any person that would know that she was in the red shed at that exact time. You can't think of any person. Can you?
Right now or then?
Then, could you think of anybody?
I couldn't think of anybody then.
Now, Terry Stainer was one of Amy's friends.
Yes.
And you were friends with Terry too.
Yes.
You liked Terry, you communicated with her.
Yes.
Amy was close to her and went out with her and did things with her, right?
On occasion, yes.
You saw those text messages that came in through Amy that you sent her, sometimes talking about Amy, right?
Yes.
You told Terry about your suspicions about the affair with Jerry Frazier, right?
I told her about text messages.
Told her about text messages, and you also talked to her a little bit about those rumors that came out sometime in August, right?
Yes.
So, Todd, we talked about this a little bit. Let's go back to your flip phone. You have a flip phone that you cannot search the internet on, right?
Yes.
And your Gmail account is toddmullis76@gmail.com.
Yes.
And Amy had her own Gmail account, correct?
Yes.
And I believe it was mullisrn@gmail.com. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
And that iPad is yours.
It's the farm's.
It's the farm's. Well, there's a laptop at your home, correct?
Yes.
And that laptop is used for the family. It kind of stays generally in the kitchen or living room area.
Yes.
And then the kids, there was 3 Kindles that were recovered from your house, correct?
I think so, yes.
And then Amy's phone was recovered. I think you gave
Yes.
that to the police. And then this iPad, you recall that? You recall the police asking you about this iPad that day when they were executing the search warrants?
They asked for all computers, yes.
Okay, so they actually ask you, hey, do you have anything else? And you volunteer, you say, oh, I have an iPad, right?
Yes.
You say you do. And you say it's in your tractor.
I said it's not Mom and Dad's.
Okay, and you're there, your sister Lynn is there, right?
Yes.
And you're talking to Agent Turbett and Travis Hemsath from the Delaware County Sheriff's Office.
Yes.
And they ask you if you can get them the iPad. Do you recall that?
Say that again.
They ask you because you're...
Yes, yes, they asked me.
If you can get it. And actually, it's your sister Lynn that calls your brother Mike and says, hey, will you bring us the iPad?
Yes.
So a few minutes later, Mike comes and he hands you the iPad.
He hands it to the deputies.
He hands it to the deputies in front of you, right?
Yes.
And the officers ask you if that's your iPad, and you say yeah.
Yeah.
And you say that it has a wireless, cellular service, so you can use it when you're out on the farm.
If I'm out in the field.
Because so you don't have to be connected to Wi-Fi.
Yes.
And they even ask you if anybody else uses it, right?
I don't know if they asked me that or not.
Well, they asked you that, and you said sometimes the kids do. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what I said. Yeah.
Okay, and you heard your brother Mike testify yesterday that he remembers one time searching for something on that iPad.
That's what he said. Yes.
And he knew the password.
Yes.
And after this iPad is handed over to the agents, Travis Hemsath asks you for the password.
Yes.
And you don't give it to him right away, right?
I hesitated because I had never been through this before.
Right.
I didn't know if it was...
No idea what was going on.
I had no idea what was going on.
And you look at your attorney, Bob Sabers.
Yeah, I looked at him and yes.
He says, go ahead and give it to him.
Yes.
And so you give it to him.
Yes.
And did you actually set up that iPad?
No.
Who would have set it up?
Amy.
So she set it up with your Gmail account.
Yes.
And you're familiar, you have an actual Gmail account.
That she set up, yes.
Okay, but you sent emails from it?
A few.
So do you understand how Google works? Do you know how that works?
No.
Well, so on your iPad, you have a Google app, right? Or you can go to the Google website.
Yes.
Because
yes.
We'll get into it, but some of those searches are yours, right?
Yes.
You admit there are times you use that iPad to search things.
Yes.
So you know that You go and you can either go to the app or you can go to like Safari and go to Google through there.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
You also have a way on your iPad to get your Gmail, which is just your email, right?
I usually went on Safari,
Okay.
put Gmail in, and then my email would.
Then your email would pop up. And when you wanted to do a Google search, would you go to Safari or would you hit the Google app, if you remember?
It was a button.
Okay, but every time you went on that iPad, you didn't have to, you didn't go to settings and connect your Gmail account, right?
Settings, no,
No, because your Gmail account was already set to that iPad.
I guess.
And like you said, some of those Google searches were yours.
Yes.
But sometimes Amy would use your iPad.
She would use the iPad, yes.
Okay. Amy would physically use that iPad, right? Like
Yes.
to search things, obviously, yesterday, like that wedding stuff and bride stuff. I mean, like you said, you didn't do that, right?
No, I did not.
Pinterest, none of that stuff.
No.
That wasn't you. But there are lots of Google searches. I know it's like 80 pages. You said yesterday you briefly went over those Google searches, right?
Yes.
I think when your attorney asked you, you said that you started looking through them. And, but I mean, if you look through them, and I know you looked through them briefly, there's lots of ones that you know you did do.
Yes.
That you actually typed in and searched things.
Yes.
And things about hunting and combines and bows and all kinds of things. Right?
Yes.
And on July 26, 2018, there's a bunch of searches about Jerry Frazier's address, Christy Frazier, and you did those.
Yes.
And that was right around the time that you confronted Jerry and his wife. Or, I'm sorry, confronted Jerry and then called his wife. Right?
Yes.
And a couple days before that, there's a search for menopause symptoms, and you told us you were looking up about whether or not you thought Amy was premenopausal, right?
I don't remember when I looked that up.
But you do remember looking it up.
Yes.
And I know I asked you this, you have a flip phone, so you can't do internet searching on your phone.
No.
So your primary, when you would look things up, it would be on that iPad.
That or on the computer.
Or on the computer. Whose Gmail account was connected to the computer?
All of ours.
Okay, well.
I don't know whose.
You don't know whose was, okay.
I'm not.
So it would be, all right, sorry. So let's see, sorry. On December 25th, 2017, there's a search for was killing more accepted centuries ago. Did you do that search?
I think Amy did that.
Okay, so you remember.
I think we were looking it up together after we watched a documentary on
December 25th. So you guys were watching a documentary on Christmas.
Yeah.
You remember that? Okay. And then. Now, I know yesterday you were asked about the search, boys being raised like pussies. You remember that?
Yes.
And you said you didn't do it, right?
I didn't do the search, no.
You think Amy did that one?
We had talked about it, and I'm assuming she did it.
So you're assuming she did. You don't know if she did it.
I don't know.
And it was because somebody at Wyatt's school was like, was it Wyatt's? Somebody from Wyatt's school was picking on him?
I don't know if he was picking on him, but he was getting his money somehow.
Okay. Which is also known as like a bully, right?
Yeah.
Now, on January 5th, 2018, there's a search for characteristics of cheating women. Did you do that search?
No.
Okay. Do you know who did that search?
No.
You have no idea?
No.
And just around that same date, there's a search for what did ancient cultures do to infidelity? Did you do that search?
No.
Again, you have no idea who did that search?
No.
There's a search on here, that same date, 16 facts about cheating women. Did you do that search?
No.
And right around that time, did ancient cultures kill adulterers? Did you do that one?
No.
Now, let's see, a couple days later, there's search for thrill of the kill. Do you remember that one?
Yes.
And looks like there's a few visited sites, and then after, in that same bunch, there's search for thrill of the hunt. So did you do that one too?
Yes.
And then go one more, and it's actually typed in, once you hunt man, will you always feel the thirst? Did you write that too?
Yes.
Now, yesterday your attorney asked you about this series of searches that talks about being the biological father of their children. You recall that?
DNA.
I'm sorry, DNA. He asked you some questions about that. And actually, the first search of that bunch is how to make sure your kids are yours, right?
If that's what it says.
And then after that, it's biological father, things like that. That's what your attorney showed you yesterday. Does that kind of, you remember those questions?
Yes.
So you don't remember doing those searches either?
No.
You didn't do them?
No.
Now, when do you learn about when do you suspect Amy's having an affair with Jerry? Or you're worried about their relationship being more than just business?
When I thought it was odd about Jerry was mid-July.
Okay. Now, you've heard testimony from Jerry that that he did have an affair with Amy.
Yes.
And you were probably pretty shocked to hear that when you heard about that, eventually.
Yes.
And you heard testimony that affair started in May 2018, right?
That's what I heard.
That's what you heard.
He said June, so.
And on May 10th, 2018, there's a search for what happens to cheaters in history. Did you do that search?
No.
Upgraded to juror?
How about the search right after that? Once a cheater, always a cheater. Did you do that search?
No.
And right after that, typed in what happened to cheating spouses in historic Aztec tribe. Do you remember that one?
No.
And right after that, killing unfaithful women. Did you do that search?
No.
And the last one of that bunch is a visited site. Punishment is 18 months for killing cheating wife. Did you do that one?
No.
Do you know who did it?
No.
Now, yesterday you did talk about, you remember the searches on your iPad about swimming and buoyancy.
Yes.
So you remember that you're out by, and I apologize, I think you called it crick. Is that the right wording?
We were in the pond.
The pond. And that's the pond that you guys built on your farm.
Yes.
And that you and the kids are out swimming, and it kind of comes up as a joke, like about people drowning?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you just tell me briefly about how that came about?
We were all swimming in the pond. I sink like a rock. The boys were floating, and they were going amongst themselves, who floats better? And I made the comment that some people don't float as good as others.
Okay, so then who actually physically typed in, are some people less buoyant than others?
I did.
You did. And then after that, you visited some sites, and then including something about relax and swim buoyancy. Does that sound about right?
The boys and I were looking at that, yes.
So you're looking with, and so this says here July 13th, 2018. So you're looking with, are you with Wyatt and Tristan? I apologize. Are you with both of them?
I think I was with both the boys, yes.
Were you with Taylor too?
Taylor might have been there too at home.
So at this time, Tristan's 13, Taylor is 10 or 11?
She'd have been 11.
And then Wyatt would have been how old?
8.
So you're with your 8-year-old, your 10 and 11-year-old, and your 13-year-old, and you're looking up buoyancy and people sinking and swimming.
Actually, Tristan would have been 12.
Oh, sorry, 12. That's when are you guys searching this out when you're by the pond, or is it when you're back home?
We got back home.
Okay. Now, in July 21st, 2018, there's some searches for, can my husband read my deleted texts online? Did you do that search?
No.
So, and I know there's some other ones around there about text messages on phone and stuff like that. You didn't do those?
No.
Now, you confront Amy about the affair and Jerry about the affair at the end of June, right?
No.
I'm sorry, July. I apologize. At the end of July. Does that sound about right?
I asked Amy. She was texting a lot one day, and I asked her, well, who are you texting?
And does she tell you Jerry?
No.
But you actually, at some point, do look at some phone bills.
Yes.
And you see that there's a lot of text messages between them.
Yes.
And then that's when you say something to Jerry.
Yes.
And you say something to Amy.
Yes.
But you're like you told us, you're totally satisfied after that conversation.
I was a little unsure yet.
So you're a little bit unsure, and then a month later, you hear that there's rumors going around. Right?
After I called Jerry, I talked with Ayden, and then I called his wife.
Right.
A couple days later, I put it to rest.
You put it to rest. And then about a month later, it might not be a full month, but sometime in August, you hear that there's rumors out there.
Amy told me there's some rumors.
And you didn't believe them. Did you?
No, we talked about it, and I asked where would that have started?
And so then you talked about it, and again, you felt satisfied, you moved on.
Yes.
Now, on August 9th, 2018, there's some Google searches for how long can you survive without food. Did you do that search?
Yes.
And same group searched for how long you can survive without water. You did that one too?
Amy and I did.
Okay, and searched for what lost in extreme cold and no fire, which is best way to survive. Was that you or Amy?
It was either one or the other. We were helping Taylor.
Okay. Searched for heat stroke symptoms in that same
Yes.
group. Then you went to some websites and then searched for proper way to treat heat stroke.
Yes.
Then a few minutes later, correct treatment for 2nd and 3rd degree burns.
Yes.
And keep going. What to do with large open chest wound.
Yes.
That was either one of you. You can't remember. Right.
Yes.
And then the last one in that kind of group is skin, cold, clammy, pale, pulse, rapid, shallow breathing.
Yes.
And you guys were doing that because you were helping Taylor with some type of project. Is that right?
She was taking her hunter's safety course.
Okay. So these are all things that came up then.
There was questions on the test.
And so, and where did she take that course at?
Online.
So you do, or it was either you or Amy helping. Well, you were both helping her.
Yes.
Now, let's talk about November 6, 2018. So that's the day of Amy's procedure, right?
Yes.
And this is a somewhat simple procedure, right? What you knew of it. I know you don't know that much.
Yes.
So you took Amy there and brought her back.
We voted. We went to the hospital.
Okay.
However long it took.
And you remember that day Taylor was asking you some questions about Amy's surgery.
She was asking all sorts of questions.
Okay. And is she asking you or Amy or both of you?
She was asking me because Amy was, I think, in the bedroom.
Amy was in the bedroom. And so she's, and even, I mean, Amy came home and she appeared to be okay, probably tired, right?
Yes.
And the kids, they were able to still talk to her, right? Like she's probably hanging out in bed, but she's not not available for them to talk with her.
Yes.
And Amy's both an RN and a medic, right? Registered nurse, and
yes.
She was a medic at different times for, is that the Delaware Fire Department or? Earlville. And it's your testimony that Taylor asks you about Amy's surgery.
Yes.
And what did you know about Amy's surgery? You knew it was for her lady parts. Would that be fair to say?
Sure. Yes.
Did you know what it was called?
DNC or something like that.
Okay. And did you know, did Amy at all explain the procedure to you?
Not really.
Okay. So you knew she wasn't, so who actually types in organs in the body? Is that you or is that Taylor?
I think I did.
So Taylor asks you about Amy's surgery, right?
Yes.
And you tell her it's a DNC, I don't really know. Or what do you say to her? Do you remember?
I said it was, Mommy had a procedure done, they had to knock her out.
And Amy never indicated to you that any of her organs, she wasn't having surgery on any of her organs, was she?
No.
But when Taylor asks you about it, you decide to search for organs in the body, right?
She was asking a lot of questions.
So, but she was asking you questions about Amy's surgery.
Yes.
That had nothing to do with organs of the body.
Yes.
But you wanted to show her a picture.
She asked if they had monitors on her. She asked, what did they do? Did they cut her here? Did they cut her there?
Okay, so then you didn't search pictures of the body or anything else. You searched organs of the body, right?
Yes.
And 4 days later, your wife's organs are impaled with a corn rake.
Yes.
After this happened on November 10th, 2018, you weren't arrested for almost 3.5 months, correct?
Yes.
And obviously the kids are staying with you. You're taking care of them.
Yes.
I know there's a period of time that you actually stay at your parents with the kids, right?
Yes.
But obviously you're at that point, you and your family and Amy's family is all they have because Amy's gone.
Yes.
And every day you're picking them up from school, taking care of them with the help of your family. I know your family, correct?
Yes.
Now, Todd, I just want to talk a little bit more about a few more things. So when you're at...
We had a little break there.
You call 911 on November 10th, 2018, and you pull over because 911 tells you to, right?
Yes.
And you pull over, and they tell you to get Amy out of the car.
No.
Or, I'm sorry, to lay her flat.
Yeah.
Because they want you to be able to do CPR. You remember that? Because eventually you do some CPR. Is that right? And just so that we all understand, where is it that you perform the CPR on Amy?
I started in the truck.
In the truck. And are you in the truck until Luke Thompson arrives?
I'm standing.
Or I'm sorry, you're like leaning inside the truck. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
And is she seated in the passenger seat with the seat down?
Yes.
Or, okay. So when they tell you to do chest compressions, half of your body's in the car, and that's what you're doing. You're using your mouth and your hands to do that.
I did not use my mouth.
Oh, I'm sorry. So you're just pressing. Where's Tristan at that point?
I told him to go stand by the road to flag them down if they were coming.
So as you're doing those chest compressions, is anyone else there initially?
No.
And you're holding onto that phone and you're doing the chest compressions?
I had my shoulder holding my phone against my ear.
So at that point, the only people in the car are you and Amy, right?
Yes.
And at this point, you don't at all think that Amy's cheating on you.
No.
You confronted her, you put it to bed.
Yes.
You, even after the rumors a month later, you still didn't think she was cheating on you because she told you she wasn't. Right?
Yes.
And even in those months, I know you told some people she was really moody. She was having some issues, right?
She had a lot going on all summer.
So because she had all this stuff going on in Ankeny, right?
Yes.
She was going up there. She was visiting a lot.
She had her grandma die. Her uncle had problems.
You said in those 2 months, in September and October, she was gone about 30 days.
There was a stretch in there.
And she would come and go, but she was gone quite a bit, right?
Yes.
And things are getting a little bit tense at home.
No.
So you're not upset at all about this?
I was needing help at home, and
Right. And
I guess you could call it some tension, I guess.
Well, and you're calling Eileen Fuller, Amy's stepmother, around this time, right?
Yes.
And you're telling her, this is hard, right? I'm harvesting, I'm taking care of the kids, and I know Amy's got stuff going on, but I need some help, right?
Yes.
And thankfully, you have your family close by, and they're helping a lot.
Yes.
But still, throughout those months where she's spending a lot of time in Ankeny, you're not worried that she's cheating, right?
No.
You know she's just dealing with her family, right?
Yes.
And would it be fair to say you almost like forgot about the whole thing with Jerry Frazier because you didn't think anything was happening?
I did not put Jerry in at all.
And so on November 10th, 2018, when this happens to Amy, you're not at all suspicious that she's cheating.
That she's cheating? No.
At that point, you don't have one worry that she's cheating.
No.
And when you're actually there giving her CPR and you're giving those chest compressions, all you're thinking about is your wife, right?
Yes.
You're thinking about how you're trying to save her life.
Yes.
And you're thinking you're doing everything, because I think you even say on the 911 tape, I'll do anything, right?
When they asked me to do CPR, I said I'll do whatever will help her.
And you mean that. You'll do anything at that point to help save your wife.
Yes.
And you start those chest compressions, right?
Yes.
And you heard that tape when we played it the other day, right?
Yes.
And at that point, what are you thinking when you're doing that?
Trying to get her to come back.
You're just trying to save her.
Yes.
Right? Todd, while you're doing those, did you, I know it was kind of hard to hear on that tape, but you're doing those chest compressions. How long do you think you're doing them for?
Not very long. Minute or two.
And then I think it's Deputy Thompson shows up, and then
yes.
Does he take over or somebody else takes over?
He started.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, can I publish a clip of the 911 tape?
Yes, go ahead.
And just for the record, Judge, this is State's Exhibit number 2.
We're going to slow it down.
Now, Todd, here I'm gonna play you the part where you're doing the chest compressions, and I'm just gonna ask that you listen in between the chest compressions, okay? Now, Todd, did you just hear that whisper at the end of that?
Yes.
And what did you whisper?
I couldn't hear it.
Okay, I'm going to play it again. Todd, do you whisper cheating whore right there?
No.
So you don't remember what you whispered?
No.
Okay, I'm going to play another clip for you. Do you know what you whispered there?
No.
Did you hear that? So I'm going to play that part one more time. The first clip is 6:53 of that second tape, and this second one is right at 0700. Just try to listen really closely. I just want to know if you remember what you said. Right there, do you say "go to hell, cheating whore"?
No.
So you don't hear that?
No.
You didn't hear at 6:53 cheating whore. You didn't hear that.
I didn't hear that word.
And it's right at that, after you hear a ping, you don't hear "go to hell, cheating whore."
No.
He's looking over at his lawyer.
I have nothing.
Saying, what is this?
Any redirect?
Yeah, thank you.
Todd, the state asked you if Amy wanted to quit the hospital after this first affair. Remember that question?
Yes.
Do you remember her announcing to her friends and coworkers that she was leaving the hospital?
Yes.
How did she do that?
She did a Facebook announcement, and she even had a party at a bar.
Okay. When you and Tristan realized that the pet carrier wasn't up by the shop door, what did the two of you try to figure out, or what did you decide to do, I guess is the better question.
We were just talking to wonder why it wasn't there. What she either couldn't, we were thinking that she either couldn't get it out of there or she didn't even attempt.
She didn't even go over there in the first place.
One or the other.
Okay. And I'm just going to follow some questions along, so they may jump around. There was a series of questions about where Amy was located when you first saw her in the shed. And they also ask you about your knowledge of the advisability of not pulling something out of a person that's penetrated them. You remember those questions?
Yes.
Were you able to get Amy out the door with the fork stuck in her back?
There's no way.
So you didn't have a choice?
No.
You were also asked about when you last saw that fork, and you said something about on the grass, and that you moved it?
Yes.
In that shed, have you looked at all the photographs that the state took in there?
Yes, I think so.
Were there any children's toys in there?
Yes.
What were there?
There was a multitude of stuffed animals and play items on the wagon.
The kids obviously played out there then.
Yes, they played a lot.
And things might get moved out of this shed that shouldn't be?
Yes.
You told the state that while in the hog barn that morning, you never went to the office. Is that correct?
After she left, I never went to the office.
Right. Did you go through the office when you left, though?
Yes.
Were you in the office when you and Tristan looked out and didn't see the pet carrier?
Yes.
There also was some questions about the closest point between the hog barn and the red shed. And you tell us again what that would be.
I estimated at 150 feet or so.
And that'd be from what point on the hog barn?
The very, very southwest tip of the barn by the door that you go in and out to the very northeast corner of the red shed.
And when you say the door, that's the door going into the office of the hog barn?
Yes.
Todd, why did you do the searches on or about, I think it was July 26th, for Jerry Frazier and his wife?
I was trying to find a way to contact Christy.
Christy being his wife.
Christy was his wife. I was trying to find a way to contact her.
So if the search related to Jerry, you had Jerry's contacts.
I had Jerry's contact, but I had no way of getting her phone number.
On some of those entries, those searches that the state asked you, a few of them about thrill of the kill, thrill of the hunt, hunt man, thirst for hunt, that kind of thing. You indicated you recognized those.
Yes.
And what did they relate to?
There was a quote stated in a movie, and it was actually ended up being an Ernest Hemingway quote, and we were trying to remember what it was.
Do you remember what the name of the movie was?
I think it was Predators.
Todd, did you ever have any doubt about you being the biological parents of your children?
No.
Do you have any reason to search for those DNA things?
No, I have no reason to.
Who did the search for? How long a sentence do you get for killing your cheating wife?
When the state asked you questions about you contacting Jerry and his wife in July of 2018, they said, I think the words they used was, did you confront them about the affair?
This lawyer's really slow.
Had you concluded that there was an affair?
No, I did not.
You had concerns about all those text messages?
Yes.
When you talked to Jerry, did he convince you that there was nothing going on?
Yes. I mean, for the most part, yes. He was very convincing.
Todd, when you were doing those chest compressions, if I understand you correctly, you had put Amy somewhat upright in the seat of the pickup, but leaned it back as far as it would go?
Yes.
So she was in a kind of a reclining chair position?
Yes.
And you were holding the phone and doing the compressions at the same time?
Yes.
You knew you were on a recorded line with a 911 operator.
Yes.
Do you believe that you whispered, cheating whore or go to hell, cheating whore, while you were doing CPR?
No.
Were you frantic?
I was very excited.
Were you doing everything you could to keep her alive?
Yes.
No other questions?
Wow.
Can you recross?
Just briefly, Judge.
Briefly.
Todd, that first search about the DNA is how to tell if a child is yours, right?
If that's what it says.
And Amy
wouldn't
gave
have done
birth
that.
to your children, right?
Right.
They came out of her body.
Yes.
And you also, your attorney just asked you about, you didn't really think they were having an affair in May. You were just wondering what's going on. I'm sorry, in July. You're just wondering if Jerry and Amy, if there's something, they're talking too much.
They were talking too much, yes.
So you didn't really think they were having an affair?
No.
But you did text Terry Stainer. Do you think Amy's acting like she was before? Right?
If that's what I text, yeah.
And, well, you saw those texts, right?
I don't...
Do you remember seeing them the other day?
I couldn't see the screen.
Okay, but when you sent that text, you were referring to, is she acting like before, like having an affair, right?
Yeah.
And you called Jerry Frazier's wife. I know you called a second time to apologize, but you called that first time to see if she suspected anything, right?
Yeah, I wanted to, see how if they were getting along, how their marriage was. I just wanted to...
Okay, nothing further.
Todd, in these search records, they just ask you about the DNA searches. Did you look at some of these that on January 21st, 2018, search for how to do a DNA test without the father knowing? Did you do that one?
No.
No other questions?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, sir. You can step down.
All right. There we go. That was the testimony. Did it? What do you think? Sorry, I've got to move my dinner. My wife made me chicken Alfredo with asparagus. It was very, very delicious. A couple of those searches, Amy definitely would not have done how to tell if if my kid is my own, by DNA. Amy's not going to do that search. She gave birth to them. She would know if it was her kid or not. How long a sentence do you get for killing a cheating spouse? These are very incriminating searches. Unless there was somebody who had access to this who was trying to frame him. And that's a stretch, because we haven't heard any testimony. Even people who Amy had a relationship with outside of her marriage, we haven't heard any testimony that any of them were had any suspicion whatsoever that way. Somebody did, Allison. Somebody did. No one else in the home would do that. How long sentence for listening to RA? Brightwheel. Life sentence. Doesn't look good. Had to test DNA without the father knowing. Okay, does it stand to reason that Amy could have made these searches? Because then basically for this to be useful, she would know that she was going to die, and she would be trying to frame him or plant seeds to make sure the law enforcement looked at him. That's like next level Inception type stuff. Planting search criteria that would match up with your ultimate demise to frame who you thought was going to kill you. So did she die on accident or on purpose? The jury ruled that it was on purpose and sentenced him to life in prison. Of course, now we've just watched the end of the closing arguments before this last little bit. We watched the end of a post-conviction relief civil suit where he's suing the state for convicting him. It's his last chance at getting this turned over. So his lawyers didn't touch his testimony. No objections. There were none. There should have been objections at several points, especially when he was surprised by the recording, the whispered recording. No objections. Did she die on accident or on purpose? Oh, not sure. Yes, only two people, one or two people know that. So. Sinbad said, like I said, his cross sealed it for me. Go back and replay when she asked about what he said during CPR. Watch for his smirk and smile. I've been texting Dr. G from Dr. G Explains, and he's a great friend of the channel. And I'm curious. I'd like him to if he had, maybe I'll check and see if he's done it already. I was talking about other stuff, but I'd like to see what he thinks about his testimony on the stand there, specifically when it comes to did you say cheating whore and everything else on the 911 call. But that'd be interesting. All right, dinner's been served at my house, and I got it sitting here in my office chair, which is not the best place to eat. I'd rather eat with my family. So, huge brag. It is. Hey, Dr. G's amazing. It's been a privilege to have him on the channel a couple times. I got to meet him and his wife on a live stream before, and my wife, all four of us together on a live stream. It was great. We love it. Love the work he does. It's very different from what I do. It's very intriguing to me. I don't understand it all, but it's fun to watch and listen and analyze. So his cheeks went red. His eyes, the dilation, they got tiny. They got tiny. If you go back and watch, that's what I saw. The irises just they shrunk down. What happens? What makes your irises shrink down? When somebody asks you if you said, mumbled under your breath, cheating whore, while you're doing CPR on your dead wife. I'm thinking. Fight or flight, nervous system. Thank you all for being here today. It was a fantastic Monday. Thanks for being here and getting us through what was a tough week for me. A tough weekend, I should say. We'll be back again tomorrow. We will probably have what episode with Dr. G? I was talking about some of the stuff he's done, which is all politics and not pickles, so I'm not going to talk about it here. But he's had some great success with 1 million+ views on some videos lately. So I was just congratulating him on his success and talking about that. But tonight when you go home, please hug the people you love, smile at someone, make their day just a little bit better, and please stay safe till we go live again tomorrow morning, bright and early. I think we'll have a new court case. I think if we can get the jury seated, we'll see. You guys have a good one. Bye.